Hey everyone, this is episode 49 of Sketch Watch Play, a pop culture podcast talking movies, TV, cartoons, video games, and everything that comes with those. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and most third-party podcast apps and directories. If you want to stay updated or send us feedback and topic suggestions, you can email us at sketchwatchplay@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at SketchWatchPlay. Join the Discord server located in episode descriptions. And if you enjoy what you hear, you can support the show by leaving positive reviews on Apple Podcasts and just spreading the word to friends, family, and social media. I am John Fleury, and joining me today is returning guest and fellow podcaster Felipe Diaz-Vera. Felipe, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Just kind of enjoying my day off. It's a little weird recording on not with. It's been a while since I've been on this podcast or any podcast that's not Generation Animation.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder how many new listeners we have who is like, who is this? Who is this? It has been a hot minute since you've been on this show. I checked. The Rhythm Game episode in 2018 was your last appearance.
2018? That's 4 years ago.
I know,
dude.
I know. It doesn't feel that long ago, but I guess part of it is I also took a year off from the show, so that was less time for you to be on. And then I've just had a lot of family on, but now I'm trying to get back to remote guests from throughout the country.
Nice.
But yeah, it doesn't. It also, I think it also maybe doesn't feel that as long because I've been on your show a couple times in the the midterm.
Yeah, the show that recently actually celebrated its 10th anniversary.
Isn't that crazy?
Time is weird.
Yeah, especially when you're an adult.
Yes, but yeah. So
tell us about your show, just for those who are newer to Sketch Watch Play and may not have heard before.
Sure thing. So Generation Animation is a general animation-based podcast where we talk about all things cartoons, anime, and everything in between, from internet shorts, music videos. Basically, if it's animated, we count it. And sometimes we we've been bending the rules a little bit as of late, considering, but we've been puppetry, does that count as animation? And we kind of came to a conclusion things like that. But yeah, we've been running this show for 10 years. By the time you hear this episode, we probably would have already launched our annual Halloween Spooktacular.
Nice.
Normally the show is hosted by me, Bianca, Tyler, Dave. However, also by the time you hear this episode, it's just going to be me and Dave for a little bit. So get ready for a lot more guests on that show as well.
Yeah, it's always there are like 4 or 5 regular co-hosts, but it's kind of rotating over through the years.
Yeah. Bianca's been on an extended leave for a bit, and Tyler, because he is going to be on an onstage production of Rocky Horror Picture Show for the next month or so. It's gonna be
that's right.
Me and Dave Roberts, who've been basically the founders of that podcast, and
yes, recent listeners may recognize Dave because we did have him on within the past year for the He-Man and Download Santa Claus episodes.
Yeah, you've had every Gen N host, I think, on, because I know you had Bianca.
No, I had Bianca on for a Zelda episode in the early days.
Yes.
Mark
was on
Final Fantasy.
Yes.
Tyler, I think Tyler was Tyler we did multiple Marvel movies, and then I was like, pick something unique, and we did Back to the Future.
Nice.
And you've been on multiple times for stuff like Powerpuff Girls, Rhythm Game was the last one. I feel like there's one other, but I'm trying to remember what it was.
Sam and Max.
Yeah.
We did a Sam and Max episode back in the day.
It's funny because I'm looking at the Discord chat, and the last thing I sent you is that Guardians of the Galaxy audio edit I made.
Yes, I know. I was actually looking at it recently. I was actually going through old Tumblr favorites, and I saw that clip again. It's like, oh yeah, that's right.
That's been like one of the most popular Tumblr posts. I keep getting notifications about it. Though nowadays, the one I get notifications for, it took a lot less effort. I just took a screen grab of the most popular Cyberpunk Edge Runners character.
That's all it takes. Man.
People simp for Rebecca.
Yeah, and if I can, I just want to plug one other tiny thing really quick.
Plug all you want.
If I may. This is the first time anyone's going to hear about this. I am so youtube.com/Fizucker. I am going to be releasing a long form video essay that I'm not going to spoil what the topic is about, but it's the first time I've done a YouTube video that's not a re-upload or a private video for a friend in over a decade, in 12 years in fact.
Oh, that's exciting.
Because I got inspired about a recent fascination of mine. And what started as just me just thinking of ideas while I was getting carts at work turned into a potentially 30 to 40-minute video that gets me back into YouTube video editing and just I'm excited for it.
That is very exciting. Text me the link to your YouTube username just so I spell it right, because I'll include it in the show description.
Okay, I definitely will.
Yeah. Oh, but that's exciting. So yeah, go check out. Felipe's...
I mean, the YouTube channel does have like I used to post episode by episode analysis of the cartoon Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go. I got about partway through season 3 before I stopped because it was just a lot of work.
Is it on Disney Plus yet?
It is. However, there's one annoying aspect about it being on Disney Plus.
Is it cropped?
Yeah, so the show was made in widescreen, but at the time, like Disney didn't have the programs in widescreen; it was in full screen.
Right.
Widescreen versions of the show exist because Disney XD had it in widescreen. However, it's up on Disney Plus in the original JetX 4:3 format. Which is a teeny bit annoying, but I mean, all the episodes are there, so
yeah. The important thing is it's there, and you can still follow it. But yeah, it is annoying when you know that there's there is a widescreen version and they crop it, especially in this day and age. I don't know why they would. Yeah,
it's hilarious because they did the opposite with The Simpsons back in the day, where they zoomed in,
and everybody complained, and until they added an option to change it, because Simpsons there were jokes that got ruined because they cut out text.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, we've got some fun stuff to dive into today. So this was one where I think we brainstormed for a while, and our main topic kind of came from some mutual like game series. We were originally planning to have you on. I think it was July.
Yeah, we were gonna like midsummer. We were going to do an episode where that topic is still tangentially related to the main topic of this episode.
Yeah, we can bring it up, but because the original current media was going to be the remasters of the Klonoa games, which launched, I think, in June or July, like this past summer. Not as recent now, but I think we can still figure out a way to fit some Klonoa talking to our main topic, which kind of evolved from like bringing up certain game series that came out during that time. But we do have something a bit more recent. I guess technically, if according to the video description, it's like it came out in 2017, but it got a legal YouTube upload recently, and this is something different for us, but straight up Felipe's alley, and I wanted to learn a bit about it myself, that being the Vice documentary from homeless to pro skater Chad Muska.
So many stories, but yeah. What up, tree? I'm gonna touch this tree.
Yes, so this blew up over the past 2 weeks because of the fact that Vice put it up on their YouTube channel, and it basically became a big deal. So for those of you that don't know who Chad Muska is, he is a professional former. I don't know if he still is. I think he still works for Circa, even though he's not going out anywhere and doing stuff.
Yeah, but we'll get to why.
Yes, but a professional skateboarder. Big deal in the mid to late 90s to early 2000s. If you ever heard the name, it's either because you're a hardcore skateboarding fan, or you just really like the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater series.
Yes, and I was going to say because I know you've brought up Pro Skater on Gen A in the past, like with the music and stuff, and I'm sure the remasters helped put it back on people's minds. But I was asking, do you know these guys because of Pro Skater? But you're actually into the general skateboarding scene.
So I had friends that in elementary and middle school that loved to skateboard. I could not skateboard, so I became their cameraman. I would run behind them with my VHS camcorder that I borrowed from my mom and shoot footage of them just ollieing in the park and things like that.
Cool.
Through that, I started watching the X Games in the late 90s. And, of course, during 1998, 1999, that's when Tony Hawk Pro Skater came out. So it kind of just became just this whole mishmash of things. But the hilarious part is most of the popular skaters of that time were known from competition stuff. You know, Tony Hawk and Bob Burnquist and Bucky Lasek.
Bob Burnquist, that's a name. I know nothing about the real guy, but he was my main when I played the first Pro Skater.
He is Brazilian, and he is amazing. He's the one that brought the mega ramp to... So before, there was only two types of skating that was popular. Street skating and vert skating. Vert skating is that half-pipe ramp that you just go up and down and up and down.
Yeah, I get to.
And street skating is self-explanatory. You skate on the street, you try to grind rails, ollie off of stuff, so on and so forth. He invented the Mega Ramp along with Danny Way. Maybe not invented. I think Danny Way invented the Mega Ramp, but Bob Burnquist decided to make it a competition and brought it to the X Games.
Wow.
People are jumping these giant ass gaps, like, and like
Thanks,
he's kind of like, yeah, Bob Burnquist is the man, and really cool guy apparently.
But let me ask: was Chad Muska someone you followed back when he was like active?
Here's the thing. That's the crazy thing, because I followed it through not through magazines or videos. I followed it through the X Games and stuff. There are certain people that are like urban legends if you don't like follow the scene super. And Chad Muska is one of them because he never went to competitions.
Okay.
He was a video skater.
Yeah, he was more just a freeform, almost like performer.
Yeah, he literally showed up to one X Games street competition on a whim in Los Angeles in the early 2000s and won it.
Nice.
And that's his only X Games appearance ever.
Hey, if you're gonna do it once, make an impact.
Yeah. But yeah, Chad Muska is interesting compared because for those that don't know, the skateboarding scene is very punk rock, do it yourself. A lot of the guys you see are kind of whether like hardcore rock types or just like kind of nerdy, just athletics. Like look at Tony Hawk, for example. He is just a dude. A lot of the skateboarders at the time are just dudes. Bucky Lasek, just a dude. Jamie Thomas, just a dude. Alyssa Steamer, just a girl.
She's a dude, because we're all dudes. Hey!
Chad Muska got popular because he was good and he had this like white boy hip hop energy is the best way I can put it.
Well, it's accurate. It goes into even in his youth, like he has a genuine love for rap and hip hop. It's not just a style. It's he's invested in it.
Yeah, what's funny is in the documentary he visits San Diego where he ran away from home.
Right.
And he bumped into the streets one of the people he grew up with when he was at the skateboarding area of San Diego. And he talked about, like, there's this little white boy talking so much shit that I just kind of liked him and he became part of my crew.
Made an impression.
Yeah.
I did love him, like, scenes of him revisiting the beach where he was literally, like, sleeping on the street in his younger days. And, like, he recognizes this as one big tree and is like, what's up, tree? I'm going to touch this tree.
Yeah, because it's like Chad Muska of now seems like a very chill dude, and I'm happy to see that he's kind of calmed down now that he's in his late 30s, something like that.
I just looked it up. He turned 40 this year.
Yeah, because again, he was the shit talker, partier. Once he got very, very famous, some people may also know him as one of the people that would always hang around like Paris Hilton, Nicole Richie, and things like that.
Yeah.
Which is weird considering, like, he's a professional skateboarder.
Who knows how that happened, but, when you make some money, you start hanging out with people who have money.
Yeah. I actually, after I watched this documentary, the first thing I did is, like, those Circus shoes look really comfy. I wonder if they're still in business. And they are. Circus Shoes is still a thing. The skateboarding shoe company that he co-founded.
Yeah, I think he actually goes into that kind of came out as a result of, like, they directly touch on Pro Skater, and, like, they were not at all counting on it to blow up like it did, and it made them, like, so much more recognizable, and it led to more endorsement and work opportunities.
Yeah, a lot of things like that. Just the skateboarders pro skateboarders make decent money, especially at that time. But even then, like, Pro Skater just blew up bigger than. So, did you ever hear the Tony Hawk story about when he had dinner with the head guy from Activision?
No.
So, Tony Hawk. This is when Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 was just about to come out.
Okay.
And Tony Hawk 1, 2, and 3 were all still in, like, the top 10 action sports games list of PlayStation. And he had dinner with him, and he's like, man, this thing blew up a lot bigger than I expected. He's like, yeah, it's like, we want to thank you, want to keep you around. And the CEO of Activision handed Tony Hawk a check for $4 million. And he's like, he's never even seen $1 million in his life. So he was like, what the hell?
Yeah, I was in a situation like that, I'd probably go into shock. I'd, like, shut down for a few seconds to process it.
Yeah, because he immediately like he when the interview asked him like, what do you do? Like, I don't know, like, do I put this in my bank? Do I just go to like Bank of America and just deposit this?
I guess so.
Yeah, apparently he used most of that money to build not theme parks, skate parks around the United States because that's
cool.
a big thing he's into, just giving back to the community, things like that.
Yeah, he's Tony Hawk is someone who I've not heard people shit talk. He seems pretty genuine.
Yeah, he's too busy memeing himself on Twitter by everyone saying, "Hey, you look like Tony Hawk," and he always has a funny response to it. Because there's a long-running meme called Tony Hawk's Existential Nightmare, where people constantly tell him he looks like Tony Hawk without realizing it's actually Tony Hawk.
I wonder what makes them think, oh, but it can't be Tony Hawk.
I guess if he doesn't have a skateboard in his hands, you don't think it's Tony Hawk.
It can't be Tony Hawk. He's not holding a skateboard. That's his life.
Yeah, but my favorite response is we'll get back to the Chad Muska in a second. But my favorite is like a 13 or 14-year-old girl went up to him. It's like, "Are you Tony Hawk?" And Tony Hawk said yes. And then she goes, "Why?"
Good question. I guess well, his parents loved each other very much, and
yeah.
But yeah, actually,
go ahead.
I did want to say inverse thing. I've seen. I think it's. I don't know if she's still doing them, but the inverse. You know Nancy Cartwright, right?
Yes.
Have you seen the videos where she surprises people on the street by just bringing out the Bart voice all of a sudden? Like she starts a normal conversation, and then she's like, "Who the hell are you?" And they're like, "Oh my god."
It's great stuff. Like I love that aspect of stuff. But back to the Muska thing.
Yeah.
I found very interesting about it is I was aware of skate videos being a thing back in the day. When I did my research, I didn't realize how big of a deal they were back in the day. Because the Skate or Die video or whatever the video was called that Muska was working on was like a huge fucking deal. And skate videos apparently launched a lot of stuff for people.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, the CKY skate videos that Bam Margera was in helped like co-found Jackass.
Oh, thanks, CKY.
Like, things like that were like a huge deal back in the day. You know, people would just like film for like hours and hours and hours, just days and days and days, just trying to find one trick at one location.
Yeah. I was going to say, even knowing, basically nothing about the skateboarding industry and these side industries that we're talking about, watching the clips of Muska in the documentary from these videos, that man can grind. It is. He makes it look so easy, and the parts that really got to me were, and I don't know if there's a term for it, but typically when you grind on a ledge or a rail, you do it with like perpendicular with the sides of the skateboard sticking out horizontally. He would do it vertically, which...
Yeah, so the term you're looking for is 50-50, where you just grind on the axles of the skateboard and not the board itself.
That must take such precision, and he makes it look like, oh yeah. But I'm sure it's like he's been doing this so much of his life. He's passionate about it, and it translates in talent.
Yeah, and you can see how he got the story of him going to Europe and being chased by like 300 kids with skateboards to sign.
I love the part where like it's showing certain kids being funny with him, and there's this little girl who's like, "I love Chad Mustard,
my favorite skateboarder."
Another one who's got like made him drape over his arms, like, "He adopted me. Chad Muska adopted me."
Yes, this little kid just is holding on to Chad Muska adopted me. So he wasn't lying about certain skateboarders had skateboard decks that even if you weren't a skateboard, they were like cool to hang on your wall. The deck is, by the way, the wooden part of the skateboard that doesn't have any wheels or axles on it. It's called the deck.
Is it the part you decorate?
Yeah.
Yeah,
the part with the
board
paint
itself.
on the bottom end.
Yeah.
Those were huge sellers back in the day, and to a point still are. Some people do still like to hang them on their walls as art pieces and things like that. And there were like 4 skateboard decks that I think are like iconic. And one of them is the Muska of him, like it's just white and red, the word Muska, and him sitting on the ledge. I think they show it briefly in the documentary.
They might have.
Yeah, that. And that's the one that Jonah Hill says, like, I have it hanging on my wall, and I'm not selling this.
Dude, when Jonah Hill popped up, I did a double take.
Yes. There's that. There's the Tony Hawk Birdhouse board. There's the Jamie Thomas Zero board. That's, like, super. And there's the Eric Costin Girl board, which my sister had an Eric Costin Girl board. And that's when I learned I wasn't good at skateboarding.
But you can still like it.
Yeah, yeah. I tried to, and I just couldn't balance. Like it was a big thing for me. I was just like, I'll just ride my bike.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Side note: I'm trying to get into. I guess I am getting into technically game modding. Have you heard about the Guitar Hero modding scene?
I am aware of it. Yes,
People are
it's
taking
been
the
around
world.
for a while. People are doing like have been doing note charts for Guitar Hero.
Well,
through
yeah,
Clone
we talked.
Hero
Go
for
back to
ages.
our rhythm episode. We talked about Clone Hero 2, but now it's extending to like the games themselves because I guess Guitar Hero 3 and World Tour got PC ports, and now people have figured out how to do like custom character models, and so that's what I'm.
Oh
working
yeah.
on.
There's this one YouTube guy that I watch from time to time.
Is it Akai?
Akai, yeah. He got modded into Guitar
I was gonna
Hero
say
3.
they made a model of him, and actually one I saw recently that got a response from the person. The Game Grumps got put in, and somebody tweeted it to Aaron. He went, "What the hell?"
Yes.
So, but back to
all
this.
respect to the modding scene. But yeah, Chad Muska blew up, made a lot of money. Now, it wasn't just successful as a skateboarding scene. He freaking he founded a hip hop company called Muska Beats.
Yeah. It shows him. I think he recorded some stuff. I don't know if it's him rapping or doing instruments or what. But it's
He
like,
was rapping, but for the most part, like I don't think anything he released has him rapping. Everything he has is just his. He makes a beat and he gets a rapper that you are shocked the notoriety of these rappers he gets.
dude.
Like
I gotta say when it showed, I saw Ice-T fondling some girl's boob. But the one that got to me was Biz Markie because I was like, oh, time comes for us all.
Yeah, but it's nuts. How you can see how he made all that money so he can buy the infamous Cadillac Muscalade, which is actually in Tony Hawk's Underground. Like the first person you meet in Tony Hawk's Underground in PS2 is Chad Muska in the Muscalade.
Oh, nice. I gotta say, one part in the modern day parts that made me happy was him saying, "Yeah, get a Prius. Don't worry about this. Like, get a Prius because I'm a Prius owner."
Like no Muscalade, nah, get a Prius.
I will.
Yeah, but like it's funny how like I used to love the myth of Chad Muska because you with the only stuff you can see him skateboard is like you unlock videos in Tony Hawk or like maybe if you're lucky you'd find something like on him like on TV briefly.
Oh, like the pre-YouTube days.
Yes. Like I was like Chad Muska and also even rarer Kareem Campbell are like they're so hard to find footage of like back in the day. But then like you see the story about him kind of spiraling out of control even like before he blew up, like him not being on the Skate or Die video that or whatever it was
he
called.
threw a hissy fit and got fired.
Yeah, he got drunk at a movie premiere at 17 years old and yelled at his boss's face. Because of an exporting issue.
Yeah, they couldn't show the premiere. There was a tech issue, and he got pissy about it.
Yeah,
and he talks about how that was like a kind of wake up moment for him in terms of like lesson learned.
Yeah, but even then, like you fast forward years later, and he's like getting arrested. Like he has the full on like long hair and the beard. He doesn't even look like Chad Muska anymore. Yeah. And him showing up on TMZ for like drunkenly calling out cops and shit.
Yeah, he was on something. It didn't seem just like beer. I'm like, there's some substance going on.
Yeah, and then you realize that he's injured himself quite a bit in recent years.
Yes, and they were both caught on tape. A leg dislocation, and then when he let that heal a bit, a disc slip.
Yeah. And he doesn't want to get surgery on the disc slip because he's afraid if he does, he'll never skate again.
Yeah, but he hasn't. But he also hasn't skated regularly since, and he has no idea if he will or not. Yeah,
I think because the thing is, he does skate from time to time, and he actually did a 180, an ollie kickflip off a ramp to end the documentary.
Yeah, and it sucks if he is like done professionally because I know that age means more susceptibility to injuries, but is Tony Hawk still skating?
Not professionally. Tony Hawk.
So look it up. He's 53.
Yeah, but Tony Hawk still used to do demos and things like that even up to like 2 years ago.
Okay.
However, what happened was he fractured his femur in half. And he hadn't, up until like 2 or 3 months ago, hadn't even stepped on a skateboard since then. But there's a great YouTube video that came out like literally 2 months ago about Tony Hawk does his first kickflip since injury. And it took him like, you see it, like he took like 40 tries just to land a kickflip.
He was out of practice, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think you'll ever see Tony Hawk even like maybe on a regular ass vert ramp ever again. But there's still guys that are up there in age that are still going. Bucky Lasek still competes. Bob Burnquist still competes. Danny Way still competes. And there are people that just skateboard for a show. Rune Glifberg still goes. Oh man, what's the name of the guy that like does like the standalone stuff? It's gonna bother me if I don't look this up.
Dude, you're asking the wrong person that question.
Yeah, there's a guy. 1 sec. Well, but while I look it up, I will say, just Chad Muska in theory could still go if he was healthy, but skateboarding's a young man's game. If you watch the X Games now, a lot of the top ranked people are like 15, 20s. 16.
Oh, Jesus.
Like no, younger than that.
High school age. Wow.
Like
teens.
Yeah, they're teenagers.
Oh, yeah.
Of course,
I
there are still like the people that are much older that are still good. Like Sandro Diaz is in his late 30s and he's still competing.
I guess Muska was in his teens too when he started. I just forgot that because it mostly shows him older. But I will say, like, the parts we get of him modern day, like it's not like things are going badly for him because he's like he goes into like he's picked up a more healthy diet and lifestyle. He's actually making art too. I don't know about the hip hop, but he's doing painting and like graffiti and stuff. And my favorite bit is collection of raising these cute dopey looking pugs.
Oh yeah, they look ridiculous.
The tongue and stuff. I'm like, these are dopey dogs, but I'm sure they're very sweet.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the way it leaves you is like, it's kind of like almost like a rise and fall and rise again story. Now, granted, the neither the drug arrest or the drunk arrest, whatever he was on,
or whatever he was on,
or the injuries like ruined his reputation or livelihood or anything like that, but they were like wake-up calls and like transitionary. But it leaves you, because they go into like, you know, him getting swept up in the glitz and the risk of, you know, Hollywood and celebrity culture, and you look at other people and you're like, this could have gone way worse. And it's nice that he's, you know, he's entering middle age with a healthy lifestyle and outlook.
Yeah. For the record, the person I was trying to think about was Rodney Mullen, who he's famous because he came up in the era of flatboarding. So that's not a thing anymore, but it's super cool to watch. Where because back in the day when you would tour competitions in the late '80s or whatever, people aren't going to let you skate anywhere in the street, and they're not going to build vert ramps for you. So all you have is just an open set of street, and you would just go out there and just do what you need to do.
Just check on the flat street?
Yeah. And he was a pioneer in that kind of thing. And he is super cool to watch. When we're done here, I'm going to send you just a quick Rodney Mullen thing. And
that'd be cool.
He is literally so crazy to watch.
Oh, you send a gift. Is that him?
Yeah.
And I'm going to watch this. Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's like literally just nothing but just street, and that's not even like the half of it. Like,
that
you
see him
like
you should go down in a heap, and he just lands like it's nothing.
Yeah, he's the one that invented the dark slide, which is a trick where you slide on the opposite end of your board. Like his whole thing is, if you give him just flat ground, he will trick.
Wow.
He is nuts.
That is. Oh, he sent another hand on. Let me see. He's doing a handstand. Oh my God! That's the thing. They make it look so easy.
Yes.
For those who aren't,
yeah.
So for those who can't see this, he has his board on the ground. He's standing on it, doing a handstand on one hand. He like jumps up in the air and flips the board, and the board lands sideways, and he plants his feet and lands on it. And it doesn't fall over.
Yeah.
Holy
Apparently,
shit.
Rodney Mullen invented a lot of the flat. He invented the Primo, the Impossible. Like the 360 shove it. That's all Rodney Mullen.
I was gonna say, like, I wonder, like, how much can flatboarding really bring? And I'm like, oh, it can bring quite a bit if you get creative.
Yeah, like the thing about flatboarding is it's super interesting, and nobody does it anymore because it's very specific.
Sure. It's a niche.
Like most people are either vert, skate, or big air skateboarders nowadays.
Yeah, those are big ones. Yeah.
But you find someone who's super, super good at flatboarding. I don't know if there's anybody on the level of a Rodney Mullen in these days, but Rodney still does it from time to time. Like he has done TED Talks on skateboarding because he invented like a lot of the flatland tricks that now street skaters do off of ledges or whatever.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think this is a documentary that we are both going to recommend. Obviously,
Yes.
I would even say like it would certainly help if you're like Felipe and have an interest in this subculture. Me knowing nothing about it, I still thought it was interesting to look into the history of it and also the history of Muska.
Yeah, because Chad Muska, at the end of the day, he's one of the few skateboarding personalities. Again, the biggest stars in skateboarding are usually because they're just really, really good at skateboarding. Not to say Chad Muska wasn't. In fact, he was fantastic.
No, those grinds.
Yes, but there's an infamous image on Thrasher magazine, I believe, where he does a board slide holding a boombox, and that became his signature. He would walk around with a big ass boombox.
That was a thing for the documentary. He often had boomboxes handy because of his music, his music love. And I think music is very highly tied to skating, which I know you're also a music guy, so perfect match.
Yeah, I think honestly, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1. A part of the appeal of it is not just the cool skateboarding, but the exposure to the hard rock and industrial metal and the alternative hip hop soundtracks that were in those games.
And the ska, Superman.
And the ska, yes. Of course, the most infamous Tony Hawk song in there is a ska song.
But
it's fun.
But yeah, we both recommend this. And the nice thing is it is legally available, totally free to watch on Vice's YouTube channel. I will include a link to it in the description. It's a brisk 45 minutes, and it's very cool and kind of a just neat look into this thing, into this whole thing.
Vice documentary, just Vice documentaries can be sometimes a little iffy. However, this series of videos they've done on skateboarders is super cool because you can tell it's made by someone who adores skateboarding.
That always helps.
There's one that I haven't watched yet that I've been putting off, one on Spike Jonze, who started as a skateboarder,
right.
Eventually worked on Jackass, and freaking made Academy Award nominated films.
Yeah, I've seen and liked 2 of his movies, and I actually remember seeing him in Jackass and being like, how did that connection come about? Turns out
it's a skateboarding aspect.
Yeah, because Bam and the
Bam Margera, Steve-O, Ryan Dunn, and Wee Man were all skateboarders.
Yeah, because Tony Hawk appears in some Jackass movies as well, so I guess okay, that makes sense now. Because I just thought it was just maybe just the area and the subculture, but it's skateboarding itself. Oh, the more you know.
Yeah, yeah. Skateboarders, unless they're beefing, tend to pretty much stay decently together.
Good for them.
Yeah, that's why you see like, a one-off Rodney Mullen doc, and you get Eric Costin and Tony Hawk and Alyssa Steamer and Jamie Thomas for it, and Jonah Hill apparently.
Does Jonah Hill skate, or does he just?
I think it sounds like he's I think he's just a fan, which again, I'm one of them too.
Yeah.
Unless he I'd love to see Jonah Hill on a skateboard, but the way he talked about getting the Rodney Mullen Rising Sun deck on his wall means like he's one of those people that just really appreciates the art and hangs the decks like art pieces. Yes.
But yes, very cool documentary. Any other Vice documentaries you'd recommend before we move on?
The other Vice documentaries that I have seen are on aspects of that I think might be less interesting to your regular viewers. Case in point, the Dark Side of the Ring Vice documentaries, which is about bad situations that happen in professional wrestling.
Okay.
Yeah, they're all super great, but they're kind of heavy. And if you don't like pro wrestling, it's already a niche subject, and you get into like the aspects of people, who would abuse drugs, who have assaulted people in the past, things like that.
Yeah, like even I don't know nothing about wrestling, but even I know about the Chris Benoit story, which is tragic.
Yeah, and that's not even covering things like the airplane ride from hell or what Ric Flair did to a few people back in the day.
Shit.
Luckily, Vice, the guys that made that said like that you can't make those documentaries without starting to hate wrestling. So he said he's not doing them anymore.
He didn't want it to ruin his fandom.
Yeah. So he actually put out a new one that came out like last year called Memphis, where wrestling was real. Where back in the 1980s, like, everyone believed pro wrestling was real.
Yeah.
And because of that, people would get into like, fans would riot if someone won a match, things like that.
Like it was a real sport. That's so cute.
Yes.
That is not me slamming wrestling and wrestling fans.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm just cracking a joke.
Again, Vice documentaries are up and down because there's some really great stuff, but then other ones seem like it's just like, let's talk about sex and drugs because nobody else is doing documentaries about these. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just disclaimer, I think there's a real chance that I could be a wrestling fan today if not for the fact that my parents banned it from my childhood.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. To be honest with you, like over the past 15, 20 years, like I would say there's no reason to get into pro wrestling now. It's been an upswing over the past 2 or 3 years, but like even then it's a hard sell. Like it's a hard sell.
Yeah, but those who are into it, and you and several of the JNAM people are among those.
Yes, indeed.
But I don't think we're ever going to do a dedicated wrestling episode for this show.
No,
I can say that much.
Yeah. If you ever want to talk about dedicated skateboarding stuff, I'd be happy to show you some like iconic like X Games moments. We were talking about Bob Burnquist. He actually has what is called the perfect run that he did in 1999.
Wow.
Where he had 90 seconds and on his vert ramp and he landed he literally invented 4 tricks in one run.
Wow.
And you hear like this commentary team losing their mind because it's like this is something no one's ever done before, let alone in competition,
and he's
let alone
back
to back. Yes.
Oh, that's cool. You can send me some of those links in the Discord, and I'll give them a look.
Yeah. I think I'll start with just the Rodney Mullen stuff because I think that's just gonna blow your mind.
Yeah, but so documentary both recommend. You want to move on to our main topic?
Of course, sure thing, buddy.
All right. So this came about, and I guess this is the first time we've certainly done talk about game series and even you and me, game genres with the whole rhythm game history. But I think this is the first we are talking about a specific console or system. And this sort of came about because, I always, when I have a guest on, 9 times out of 10, I'm like, you guys pick the topic. I'm up with some suggestions. And Felipe has had stuff that he's brought up multiple times that we haven't picked, but a lot of it was like, a lot of it was like series from this certain era. A lot of platformers like Jak and Daxter's, like Hooper, Ratchet and Clank, Klonoa, and I think there were even other games related to that. Like maybe did you bring up Tekken, or maybe that was someone else?
Here's the thing. I would be down to do a Tekken episode, but do you know how dense Tekken lore is?
I've played some of them, and I know it's just kept going, so I have a vague awareness, and I need to catch up. Maybe when the new one comes out.
I used to know every character backstory and aspect of Tekken, even as convoluted as it was.
I know.
And then Tekken 6 happened, and there was a Swedish Mishima, and I'm like, I'm done.
I know Bianca is pretty knowledgeable, because I love her anger when you reviewed the original Tekken anime, and she was pointing out all the weird retcons. I did watch the first episode of Bloodlines, and it seems pretty good.
I've yet to watch Bloodlines because I just haven't had the time to. Yeah. But like I've heard mostly good things. Apparently, it kind of like it cherry picks things that happened in Tekken 3. But like again, I have to watch it for myself to.
The intro is straight out of Tekken 3. I'll say that much.
Yes.
So even though it was like I don't know about the time I was like, well, I love those series, but I don't know if there's enough to fit. Stretch to a whole main episode. But there was a theme I noticed, which was this certain era and this certain system, that being the PlayStation 2. And I'm not going to lie, this is a system that means a lot to me and has a lot that can be talked about. So I threw out to Felipe, instead of one interval series, how about we talk about this whole system and its era and its heyday and all the milestones and highlights that come from it. So to start off, Felipe, I'll get into some history stuff, but when did you first remember either hearing about or getting the PS2?
So, I will say, I grew up when I was a wee bab. I had when I was like 3 or 4, I had an NES. However, immediately after that, I had a Pico computer. You know what that is?
Heard of it?
It's a Sega Kids computer.
Yeah, Pico.
Yes, and then Sega Genesis, and I was a Genesis kid from when I was all the way up until like the mid to late '90s. Just
Yep.
Genesis. My uncle had a PlayStation 1, and there were two games he loved to play: the original Tekken and the original Metal Gear Solid, and we would just watch him play.
Nice.
Eventually, I had a PS1 of my own, and I became like a big Crash Bandicoot guy and Tekken and all this stuff. And so when my parents realized how much I loved the PS1, for Christmas, I think the year it came out, I got a PS2.
Awesome.
And I loved it. They gave me 3 games with it, which was, I believe, WWF SmackDown Shut Your Mouth,
Of course.
Metal Gear Solid 2,
Yep.
and what's the third one?
Was it Tekken Tag?
It was Tekken Tag 1, yes.
Yeah, that I remember felt like the visual showcase of the launch lineup.
Yeah.
When like those big moments of like, hey, here's a taste of just how big a leap we are going to get.
Yeah,
in
because
visuals.
Tekken Tag 1 looks so much better on PS2 than it does in arcade.
Oh, did they
Because the
enhance
arcade
it?
uses the Tekken 3. Yeah, the Tekken Tag 1 on arcade uses Tekken 3 style graphics.
Oh,
And so for the home port, they smooth out new models, and there's a little bit too much of it in retrospect, but like certain like lighting effects in certain stages were like, whoa, look at this.
I remember motion ghosting was a big thing on the PS2. Like GTA 3 had it on by default. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
Not as big on in today, but it was a neat back then. It was like, oh, you can do this on PlayStation. So me, kind of a similar. When I said I was a Super NES kid growing up, I did love the Genesis, but I didn't have the money to get an additional system when I got my Super NES for Christmas as a kid. But any opportunity I got to play Sonic, had friends or the like, I would. And after that, because I was I guess a fanboy at the time, I was like, well, we got the N64, and I remember being very interested in the PS1 and begging my parents to get it, but didn't happen. So every time I was at a friend who had it, and I had a couple who did, I would take an opportunity to try stuff like Crash, Spyro, Tekken. I believe I had a mom and pop video store that you could rent a PS1 for like $15-20 for a weekend, and that led me to discover the Parappa and Jammer Lammy original games that we go back to our rhythm game episode for more in-depth talk on that. And admittedly, I was a latecomer to the PS2, relatively speaking. So it came out in the faraway year of 2000, and I was focusing on other systems at the time, like getting the GameCube and the GBA and stuff. But I remember the day that I finally saved up allowance and chores, and I believe it was the last day of school, 2002, so like late spring, early summer. To commemorate the last day, I saved up my money and got driven to the local Toys R Us, again showing that it's a different time. I did not have enough money to get any games, so I rented... Actually, let me get to the really cool part. I didn't have enough money for games or for a memory card. For those who don't know, back then, because the games were on discs and the system didn't have a hard drive natively, you had to buy a separate little, like almost like a thumb drive to save data on.
Yeah.
And I was either in front of or behind a father getting some stuff, and I mentioned to I think the clerk asked me when I was getting it, like, any memory card? I'm like, oh, I can't afford it. And the dad was like, oh, what's that for? And I said, oh, you do this. It's important so you can save and keep your game going and stuff. But I'll just get it later. And without a word, he just handed me a 20, and it was like, enjoy it. Like, I have no idea who this guy is or where he is now, but that's a good Samaritan if you ever met one.
Yeah.
This was not a neighbor or someone with a connection. I think there's just a guy who had some disposable income and was in a good, generous mood, and I still appreciate that. And so I went and rented 3 games: Jak and Daxter 1, Final Fantasy X, and Parappa 2. And that was a week or so to remember. I was so impressed by this thing. Like, starting out, I feel like one thing that I really want to bring up. Have you ever noticed how incremental the improvements in graphics and performance have kind of gotten with each system?
Yeah, it seems like the main draw for me of the PS5 over the PS4 is just the faster loading.
That's just on PS5.
Yeah, but PS5 to PS4 doesn't seem like huge leaps, and to an extent, like it eventually got there, but initially PS3 to PS4 even.
Yeah, it took a while. Like if you look at late PS4 games compared to late PS3 games, you can see it. But or even earlier mid PS3 games because I've been revisiting a bunch. But like we probably have listeners who like either were too young to get a PS2 when it actually was the big thing, or maybe weren't even alive, you know, because that's from our age. But you even then, like you can go and look up screenshots or YouTube videos, like compare PS1 games to PS2. Like this was the moment that like, and even compared to like the Dreamcast, because it was more powerful than the Dreamcast. This was the moment where 3D console gaming really started to solidify, I think, into how we know it today.
Yeah. Another thing that the PS2 had that led it to be so popular is it had a DVD player in
I
it.
was going to bring this up. This was the DVD boom.
Yes.
Yeah, it doubled as a fully functioning, full-featured DVD player because that was its native format for game discs, and so you could easily play video discs on it too. And that was a big part of that led to it selling like crazy because it wasn't as expensive as some like deluxe DVD players, and as a bonus, you got to play video games on it.
Yeah.
I know I used it for my like growing collection of like DVDs and anime and stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And
like
actually,
when I was growing up, actually, I used the original PS1 as a CD player, and like
Yes.
I don't know if you know, when you played, you had the PS1, you put a CD in. If you press select, there would be a random visualizer that would pulse
Yes.
with the music and
Yes.
things like that.
I've done it
and
forever.
that was my favorite way to listen to music back in the day.
Before Bluetooth speakers.
Yes.
And even those don't have visualizers. But also another important thing to keep in mind, do you remember what the initial flagship DVD was of that boom?
The Matrix.
Yeah, the original Matrix.
Yes.
And so that was something that I think also, even though the Matrix game we got for PS2 was not all that by most accounts, the movie was, I think there's a big link to a lot of people's memories of the PS2 and the original Matrix.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, Enter the Matrix did sell pretty well just because of the name notoriety.
Yeah, but I've heard it was crap. Actually, didn't they do Path of Neo and that was better?
I would not know. I've never played it.
I think it got better reviews. I think that was more like decent. And Enter the Matrix was very ambitious, but it didn't come together.
It's weird how like that PS2, GameCube, Xbox era is full of like licensed games that end up being like 6 out of 10s.
Oh yeah, I've seen so many memes about like, oh, imagine getting like Luca on the Wii or Morbius on PS2. There's the meme.
Yes.
The game
because that's what they did back in the day.
Yeah, then they changed it to phones.
Yeah, everything's on your phone now.
Everything's a match 3 puzzler.
Yeah, but it's funny because like when I think of the PS2, I grew up as a platformer guy.
Same. It's my favorite genre still.
In the Genesis, I was big into Rocket Knight and Golden Axe. Golden Axe not really a platformer, but
Sonic too,
Rocket, yeah, Sonic of course, yeah. And then the PS1 rolls around, and I played a lot of Spyro 1, didn't really touch any of the other games, but like the Crash games, like those were me and my sister's like big thing.
Classics.
And then I got a PS2, that was just the platformer system, and like
let's get to, because one of the big things that made it such a platformer like haven was that Sony had 3 exclusive IPs that all reached trilogy status. And one of them is still going even, and that being Ratchet and Clank, and then Jack and Daxter and Sly Cooper.
So, Ratchet and Clank, we might as well start with the one that's still around to this day.
Yeah.
The Ratchet games are so good on PS2. Thing is, those are the ones I touched last because I've never been a gunplay guy.
I think I just rented the first one on a whim because I knew it was the Spyro team.
Yeah, and it turns out, like, holy crap, these games are actually really, really good. Ratchet, I think, is the only game series that I feel like each one got better over time. Like, Ratchet 1 is really good. Up Your Arsenal, I think, is the second one.
No, Going Commando, Up Your Arsenal.
Going Commando is the second one, and then
Going
Up Your Arsenal.
Commando is where, like, they really set the template. Because, like, there were 2 things I'd say they set in place there that weren't the first, that being strafing, which makes combat easier and more in-depth, but also the leveling up your health and weapons, which is such a great incentivizing you to use every weapon, like get the most out of your arsenal. And that is just a fact on top, like they were such, like, trendsetters for, like, great character animation and fun writing and voice acting. Like I love like the Ratchet games have such a fun personality to them.
Oh yeah, like Captain Quark is great. I remember Yes, Dr. Ferris, Skid McMarks.
The janitor.
What's the name of the?
Not janitor, the plumber. What's the name
plumber
of
guy? I don't know his name, but he literally every time you bump into him in the game, he's bent over.
No, he doesn't have a name. He is officially the plumber.
Okay.
And I will say, because he keeps, they even touch on in later games, like it's funny how we keep bumping into you. Have you played Rift Apart?
I have not, no.
Rift Apart confirms he's like some sort of like omnipotent watcher type who is just like watching over Ratchet and his adventures.
Yeah. Oh, Courtney Gears. How can I forget about her?
Death to Squishies.
Yes.
Fully choreographed pop song in the third game.
Yes. The humor is so good in that, and they're not afraid to occasionally be crass. Like, it doesn't like when the bad guy reveals himself to be Captain Quark at the end of the second game. The female character whose name I forget, just goes, "What the fuck?"
But they do a censor bar over her mouth and like a honk censor sound. But
Yes.
you know that actress. I think it was Phil and Lil's voice. She was cursing in the booth.
Yes.
Or actually, no. The one I always go to is, remember how Quark was living with a bunch of monkeys in the third game?
Yeah.
The monkey's like chattering to him, and he's like, "It was mating season. How was I supposed to know it was your sister?"
But yeah, like I think in terms of quality, the Ratchet games are probably, in my opinion, the best.
They are
out
my
of all of
favorite.
them.
I love all three of these, but I think that and the fact that people love gunplay in games are two big reasons why Ratchet stuck around. I just think the other two, like, they just wanted to move on over time when they got, because those developers are still making stuff for Sony, but they've gotten grittier.
A hot take. Even though the Ratchet games, I will admit, are better, I'm more partial to the Sly Cooper games.
Sly Cooper's wonderful.
Yeah, one is fun. 2 is probably like a perfect PS2 platformer.
Another one where they really found their groundwork with the sequel.
So, fun fact, I have exactly 1 platinum trophy on my PS3, and it's from the Sly Cooper re-release of Sly 2.
Yeah, I was replaying some of them recently. I think it helps that the trophies aren't like outrageous in that game. It's mostly like story or get all the bottles and stuff and get all the moves.
Yeah. Sly Cooper 3, I think, has some of the best individual levels, but there's a lot in there. I think too much.
I can see people arguing about like getting cluttered with how many. Like it doubles, not the characters that you could go on the map with, but the playable ones and their mechanics in the missions, and not all of them. Like I love Dimitri the character, but not so much his first person scuba diving stuff.
Yeah. Also, a hot take here. I completely agree with them deciding to make no more Sly Cooper games out of 3, because I felt like the trilogy wrapped up perfectly in a semi-open-ended ending that's just like perfect trilogy, wrap up, done. Fuck Sly 4.
A lot of people hate Sly 4. I think it made some bad story decisions, but I thought it was fun as a game.
Like as a game, it's fine, but just like the story is kind of just a mess.
There's a character turn in that game. I'm not going to spoil, but it makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
The time with that previous character, I was surprised, but I was like, are they going to give context to why? And no, not really.
Yeah, there were some rumors earlier this year or last year that they were gonna make another Sly game, and I'm like, and at first they were saying new game, and I'm like, no, like again, the first 3 are fine, they're a perfectly wrapped up story, and then the story came out later. It's like remake. It's like okay, I can maybe go on board with this.
And then Sucker Punch went on record like we're not making one, nobody's making one.
Yeah.
So that's dead hope for now. But I'm going to say something about all 3 of these is obviously you can get them on PS2, but all 3 got HD remasters for PS3, and I think some of them are also on the streaming service for 4 and 5.
Yes, if you have PlayStation Live, I guess now it's just PlayStation. Yeah, but I guess now it's just PlayStation Plus, like Gold or whatever it is. They're changing it to now because they list it as part of their services.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can cloud stream all 3 collections.
Yeah, and I'd say the best way to do it overall is on PS3 because there's no lag or streaming errors that way. But PS3s are not as current. But
yeah, Jak and Daxter, the first game I found really fun, and then I didn't play past the first hour of the second game because I didn't like how fucking edgy they made Jack in the second game.
That is one of the biggest, like, when they first revealed Jak 2, I was so thrown for a loop. Like, there was no hubbub beforehand. I think we knew they were probably going to make a sequel. It'll be more like this. And then apparently it was because the first game sold enough to get a sequel, but underperformed compared to what they want. So they're like, let's follow market trends. Let's appeal more to the teens. And it was very strange.
Yeah, there's this weird era of just like edgy platformers.
I wrote this down. This was a trend. Maybe that's a straight platformer, but remember what they did with Prince of Persia?
Yeah. Ratchet Deadlocked.
Which was I thought was disappointing, and they went back to the classic formula for PS3 and got better again. So I think I actually even saw a developer keynote. Insomniac has admitted, we fucked up with that one. That wasn't because it was also still being funny with the cutscenes. But I remember they first revealed it with like Ratchet in this like Master Chief helmet and armor, and everybody was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah,
and of course. Well, we'll get to it, but I do want to say, no, all the Jak games are good, because I've been replaying them lately. But I think for open world games, Jak 2 and 3 don't have that much to do outside of missions, and granted, this was in the infancy of the open world genre. But when you're doing the missions and the platforming and the action and the character stuff, it's still fun, and they're not so edgy that it feels stupid. Like, they didn't change Daxter at all. So he's a constant in keeping things from feeling too heavy. And I do like that, Jak learned to talk in the sequels at least, so he had a little bit more.
What was his first words? I'm gonna kill him.
I'm gonna kill Praxis.
Yes.
And then afterward, Daxter says, "Remind me not to piss you off," and I'm like, "This is changing." But they are good games. But I do think they're my least favorite of like mechanically and thematically of this three. But still very much worth playing. And again, all three of these developers have stuck with Sony pretty much for the most part. I think Sony might own all of them by this point.
I believe so.
Definitely Insomniac. They bought them around Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Let's just go over real quick. So Insomniac is the only ones to continue. They've made Ratchet on PS3, 4, and 5. Also, I highly recommend the Gen N episode on the Ratchet and Clank movie, where you proudly declared fuck everything about Ratchet and Clank 2016, the game and the movie.
The game specifically, because they remade the game, but used the movie's plot, which makes no sense. On top of that, you got rid of the music? Like, the music's of Ratchet and Clank was fantastic.
That's actually one thing.
It's this generic orchestra stuff.
That's one thing I think I don't like from the PS3 Ratchet onward is that it doesn't have that trademark music sound anymore. They changed composers.
Yeah, I mean, granted, with the PS3 ones, there's enough really interesting stuff where it just kind of fades in the background eventually.
Rift Apart, they got Mark Mothersbaugh to compose it.
Nice, Tools of Destruction.
That's the first PS3 one, yeah.
Yeah, it was a really, really good one. Crack in Time. Oh
That's
my
the
god!
Best one.
Yes. Yeah, but the Ratchet games, I feel like, with the exception of 2016, are still quality games.
I actually kind of like 2016 as a game, and I thought the movie was more meh than awful, but it was still a detour that we ultimately didn't need.
No,
because it didn't work out for them either.
Did you ever play? Because I never did that 4-player All for One.
All for One. Yes, I did. I never beat it. But I will say Ratchet has theories that when they do spin-offs and try and deviate, it doesn't work as well because you had the Tower Defense game, Secret Agent Clank.
Yeah.
I've heard people complain you just made the same game over and over. And I'm like, I think because it doesn't really get old if you keep coming up with new planets and stories.
Yeah,
and
here's a hot take. The PSP game Size Matters, which they eventually released on PS2, is perfectly good.
I liked it.
It's short, but it's a PSP game. It's supposed to be short.
Yeah. Also play it on PS2 if you can, because the PSP only had one analog stick.
Yeah, there's a PS2 release. That's the one I played. But yeah, I'm happy they're still making Ratchet games. In theory, I would be fine with more Sly Cooper stuff in general, but I don't know if that equates to new game because, again, I'm afraid of where they're going to take the story, where I felt like it wrapped up in a pretty nice bow unless they reboot the whole thing.
How would you feel if they just decide to reboot it?
I would be fine with it. Like, if even not remake, just a reboot, so that
Yeah.
you don't have a big bow of an ending with the fake amnesia. So that do people care about Sly Cooper spoilers?
Sly 3 spoilers. Go ahead. Skip ahead if you want to play it, because you
Yeah.
should, but go ahead.
Yeah, but briefly, literally the game ends with Sly Cooper finding his family vault, and he gets knocked out while Carmelita saves him. And at first you think is actual amnesia. You learn either eventually or at the time just instant improv. He was faking amnesia that he could be with Carmelita at the end of the day, because there's no way they would have gotten together otherwise, because one's a criminal, one's a cop.
Yes, so he basically used his excuse to start a new life.
And he gave all his friends all the loot in the Cooper vault.
Yeah, it's a sweet ending, and then they made more.
Yeah.
But I would also say it would probably be smart to reboot Jack at this point. Like, they left some stuff open with Jack 3, but it kind of felt like a good conclusion overall. It's been
Daxter
so
got
long.
pants.
Yeah, that's what it was all leading to. Daxter getting some nice jean shorts and a girlfriend. Never thought that. I will say Jack 3 has one of my favorite twists in gaming. So spoilers for Jack 3. You probably know what I'm going to say. They do the traditional thing of like, oh, there's an ancient civilization, the precursors, they died out or left, but they left powerful technology, and they're very mysterious, and you get to hear like their voices, and it's like this deep Dr. Claw voice, and you see like a spirit, like this skeletal, ethereal blue thing. So you assume either they're going to be really cool when you see them, or you're just not going to see them. And then in Jack 3, they're all a bunch of Daxters. They're all cute little Otzels.
Which makes perfect sense about why when he fell into like
Yes.
the precursor ooze, why he came out looking like that.
It wasn't a random thing. He became one of them.
Yes.
And I've heard some people were pissed at this, and I'm like, this kind of, I'll bet they were planning that all along, because it really fits the fun tone of the first a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, the PS2 is a good platformer, because not even counting like the trilogies, there's a bunch of other platformers, one of which I think you and I have been playing recently with the remake, Klonoa 2.
Yes.
Which that is my comfort game.
It's a good comfort game.
I love just playing that game and just going through it. And Klonoa is not hard, but like there are certain levels that make you think.
Yeah, especially you should play the GBA ones, because they play similarly, but there's a heavier emphasis on platforming puzzles.
Yeah, and the Klonoa games are super like easy, fun platformers that occasionally you're not in danger of dying, but like try to figure out how to get out of this room.
Yeah, and I want to throw the first game in here. I'm going to cheat a little bit, include a PS1 game, because there are, for our iconic series, there's only two of the two core entries, unfortunately. I'm hoping the remaster convinces them to make a new one. We'll see. But Klonoa 1 is also pretty famous because they play identically. It's fun and lighthearted and sugar and rainbows for like 80%. Then a character gets killed off late in the game. And then the ending, they pull something that is literally the first game that made me tear up.
Yeah, the Klonoa ending, if you don't know it, is one of the biggest like twist endings.
It's a gut punch.
Which when you get to the end of Klonoa 2, where he realizes, oh, we're going through this again. I'm ready this time.
There's this tragic element where like Klonoa can never get attached to these worlds or people he's meeting. He always has to go somewhere. He's always being called somewhere else. Which is like that's begging for more stories and games and adventures. Like
exactly, you have to build an entire world from the ground up with the only returning character being Klonoa, but that's fine. Which is hilarious considering all the prequels that are on handhelds bring back all the characters.
Yeah, they just recycle for the most part. I will say shout out. It's not PS2 or PlayStation, but now all the core Klonoa games have been translated to English. Did you hear about Klonoa Heroes?
I'm aware of it. So Ant Dude did a video on the Klonoa series.
Yeah, so Klonoa Heroes is, I guess it's technically the last fully new game, other than there was the Wii remake and this remaster, and it is a top-down action RPG where you play as Klonoa and two other characters, and it's like a dungeon crawler. And what I played of it is pretty fun. Yeah,
but I will say one thing about Klonoa 2 as a whole. When I beat the game the first time, every time I would play it again, I would always play one level over and over again. I don't know if you've gotten this far in Klonoa 2 or not.
Oh, I beat it back in the day, so go for it.
The Kingdom of Sorrow platformer that goes for like 15-20 minutes.
Is that
level.
One of the last levels?
It's one of the last levels. It's the one with the music that occasionally plays like backwards and like would like give musical cues from past
Yeah,
kingdoms and
yeah,
things
because
like that.
the end of both games get like more sinister.
Yeah, but that level, like I would if I needed like a comfort moment, I would pop in my PS2, put on Klonoa 2, and I would go straight to the Kingdom of Sorrow, which is kind of hilarious that
Nice.
my comfort level is the Kingdom of Sorrow.
I'm trying to think if I've had a comfort game in my life, and I don't know if that's a thing for me because, like, you remember how everybody's initial COVID relief game was New Horizons?
Yeah.
I played a good amount of it, but I just even then I just kept jumping from game to game. Maybe it's my short attention span or something.
No worries. And there were other platformers on the PS2 as well, by the way.
Pac-Man World 2, so good.
Pac-Man World. So, Pac-Man World 1 was the one I played a lot.
Just got a remake.
On PS1. Yeah. I haven't had a chance to play it yet because I only have so much money and Sonic Frontiers is next month.
Yep, I'm saving for that too.
But I heard fantastic things about Pac-Man World 2, but I never played it.
Yeah, it's very traditional. They don't try to do anything radical with it, but there are nice nods to the classic Pac-Man, maze and dot and ghost mechanics. He gets some moves like a rev up, like maybe it was inspired by the spin dash, where like he can rev up a charge. He has like classic butt stomp.
Yeah.
It's just it's one of the better, like what I'd say, like vanilla conventional platformers. But that's not necessarily a bad thing if you do it well, and it does it well.
Yeah.
There was also a third one that I heard was not as good. They switched developers, and there's more of an emphasis on combat. Also, a weird choice, but I kind of like it at this point. Everybody talks, so that's like the first time.
Yeah, there's actual dialogue.
I gotta say, if you go look at those cutscenes, I'm like, that's a good voice for Pac-Man. Maybe I'm alone in that.
I'd have to go back to revisit to be sure. So actually, here's a hot take. Crash Bandicoot 4, well, not 4.
Wrath of Cortex.
Crash Bandicoot, Wrath of Cortex, if you ignore the load times, was not that bad.
No, I agree. I've actually been replaying it because of something I'll say for the end. But I think the general consensus was, no, it's not bad, but it's kind of playing it safe. Like I read they want to do something more ambitious and like open world, like they did with Twinsanity, but like they just didn't have the time or money, so they were like, just make it a direct, make it do Crash 3 again.
I've actually never played Twinsanity, but I'm well aware of the jokes and aspects of it just through YouTube reviews of it that popped up a lot at the time.
It's a very well written game, but it's kind of a messy game.
Yeah, it's a fun idea with good story aspects.
Oh, some of the best platformer writing, yeah.
Yeah, but no amount of Cortex spanking Crash can make up for the game apparently has like gameplay issues.
Or Crash ogling Cortex's butt.
Yes, to that acapella soundtrack that some people love and some don't.
Oh, I like the soundtrack. It's different, but it's cool. I'll just say we can get into multi-platform stuff too. I won't go into it, but I've already praised Rayman 2 and 3 in our back early episode with the Rayman talk. We got a Rayman 2 remaster, Revolution on PS2, and Rayman 3 was on everything. So 3 has an HD port you can go back and play. 2, I don't know how easy it is to get these days, but both great games. This was also, let's not forget, this is the moment where Sonic went third party.
Yeah, so I play. Like, what's funny is like because I had a PS2, I had the PS2 version of Sonic Heroes, aka the worst one.
Yeah, I know. Having played it recently, the frame rate was not 60; it was 30, and I think it was buggier. And Sonic Heroes is already a pretty glitchy game.
Yeah.
Don't
forget about everyone's favorite game, Hedgehog with Gun.
Was another sample I was going to say of taking a game and doing the edgelord thing. And I'm going to say a hot take. I think Shadow is the worst core entry, not 06. 06 has moments that kind of click in that adventure style. Shadow, like, the aiming doesn't work. It's so reliant on gunplay, and you can't aim properly. It's so...
Here's my take on Shadow the Hedgehog.
Go for it.
As long as you're not trying to 100% the game, it's actually really short.
Yes.
So you can beat it, get an ending, and you're kind of like, I'm done.
But one thing is, back in the day, that's hard to justify full price. And two, if you want to get different endings or the true last story, like you did in Adventure 2 and the other games, you got to play all these levels over and over.
Maybe because this was at the era of video game rentals. Believe it or not, kids, you could borrow games for a price for a short period of time. Go to a store, get a game. And you'd have to bring
be the
it
highlight
back.
of my weekends.
Yes. And to me, Shadow the Hedgehog was a fine rental game. Like, I would beat the game maybe once or twice, and then like, okay, never playing this again, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah,
like, you know,
I do feel like this third-party era kind of marks a moment where like core Sonic games started getting iffy, because I wasn't big on Heroes. Shadow was not a step up, and then 06 happened, and then it became very hit and miss.
Yeah, like even like I don't know why. I'm fingers crossing that the PS4 version of Frontiers is decent compared to others. Like I'm not getting that thing on the Switch, for the love of God.
No, don't get multi-platform games on the Switch.
But because I had also Sonic Generations on PS3, which also has frame rate issues and load time issues compared to the other systems.
Yeah. I will say, yeah, we're both optimistic about Frontiers itself at this point.
Yeah. I was initially like, what? And then like as especially because of awful advertising.
It had a bad reveal.
Yeah.
But they've cleaned it up over time, and yeah, just seeing it's very surreal seeing these people on YouTube and game sites going to a preview for a 3D Sonic game and being like, yeah, it's good. What I played, I enjoyed. Like, who knew? You would assume it has to be 2D for it to click with critics. Do you have something you're about to say, or do you want me to move on to another game?
Just really quickly about platformers on the PS2. So like we pretty much went through all the big players, and all of them have like good to decent games that we've mentioned. Like again, like Sonic Heroes is probably the worst version of it, but like I didn't mind Heroes on PS2. The Spyro games on PS2, however,
never. I didn't play them, but I did not. I think Enter the Dragonfly is particularly infamous.
Yeah, it's just like out of all like the platformer mascots of the era PlayStation, Spyro got it the worst. Like that's unfortunate.
It's very unfortunate because I was on PS1. I actually preferred Spyro to Crash, so I was bummed out to hear about how he went through. Actually, you know what? I never played Enter the Dragonfly or Hero's Tale, which I heard was better, but still meh. But I did try when they rebooted it with Legend of Spyro, and that was a real "what the fuck is this" moment. Yeah, let's make it a brawler.
I'm glad that they did the Reignited trilogy, and I've beaten. I'm in my progress of trying to 100% Spyro 1, because that's growing up I didn't play 2 and 3, and I could go ahead and just play 2 and 3 now, but a part of me wants to 100% Spyro 1 because it doesn't seem difficult.
Fair,
it's just time consuming.
Yeah, definitely don't skip 2 and 3 overall, because they're awesome.
Yeah.
It's actually a similar progression to Sly, where 2 gives you more of a world structure and focused story, and then 3 adds a lot more playable characters. So there you go. I don't think people consider it as cluttered as Sly 3, though. They're more like side missions. Like you're still going through the hub and stuff strictly and the main level is strictly as Spyro. And one thing I'm going to say that I'll touch on at the end more is one nice thing about a lot of the most beloved PS2 games is that even if you don't have the system itself these days, they have gotten remasters. We talked about those 3 platformer trilogies being on the PS3 and now PlayStation Now for some of them. Spyro and Crash got these full-on remakes. When granted, that's the PS1 ones, but you could play them. That's another thing I wanted to bring up. A big deal for me was the fact that this was my first brush with the concept of backwards compatibility on a home console. Like, maybe it wasn't a big deal for someone who already owned a PS1, but I remember getting it and being like, oh my god, now I can finally go back and buy Spyro and these other things that I always loved, or stuff I always meant to check out. And it's kind of crazy that Sony hasn't really gone full hog on that again until the PS5. For those who don't have one, the PS5 fully supports PS4 games and even runs them better. And it's one of my favorite things about it is revisiting old games with higher frame rates and stuff. So, but like, I guess, was that not a big deal for you because you had the PS1?
Yeah, like, if I'm going to be honest, I had a PS1, and then the PS2 came out, and I played my PS2 games on PS1, but I've never was a tech guy growing up. I was just like, oh, I can just play my PS1 games on PS2. My PS1 memory card works on my PS2. And that was just all there was to it. I guess
my point is, like, in this day and age, like, I only have so much room under my TV for systems and so many ports. But also, like, I talk about the performance boost. Like, I've realized going back and revisiting PS3 and 360, like, man, a lot of the frame rates in that era are shit.
Yeah.
Like that was not as in demand back then, and now it's more expected. Like you heard about people going like, "What do you mean Gotham Knights doesn't have performance mode? I can't play it at 60 FPS." Like, what are you doing? Like it's just it's become that we're that accustomed to. Like we're spoiled with the current game spec. We are like you kids today. You don't know. Back then we had 480p 4x3 and we liked it.
I mean, yeah, like I guess because of just growing up the way I did. Frame rate issues and things like that weren't really that big of an issue for me. Like, well, let me rephrase that. Consistent frame rate,
yes,
is no matter what the frame rate was, doesn't like the 30 or 60 doesn't bother me as long as it stays like locked like that.
Yes.
My problem is when things slow down, skip frames.
Yes. I'm also going to touch on real quick. There were some big iconic titles from Square and Square Enix back in the day. We've already done Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts episodes, so I won't go too into it. But Final Fantasy X and Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, touchstones of my PS2 days.
Definitely.
Played the hell out of those.
So you want to know a crazy thing?
I do.
Growing up, I was never an RPG guy, so Final Fantasy X was my first Final Fantasy.
Okay. I thought you were going to say it was your first RPG.
Technically, well, Pokemon exists.
Yeah. For me, it was Pokemon before that Mario RPG.
So not counting Pokemon, my first RPG would have been Paper Mario, the first one. My sister had an N64 while I had a PlayStation.
Nice.
And the only time I ever really touched her N64 was when I wanted to play wrestling games.
Yep.
Or Pokemon Stadium.
Yep.
But there were a couple of games that I played on there that were like the original Smash Brothers and Paper Mario. PS2 Final Fantasy X was my first Final Fantasy, and I beat that thing.
Yeah, it takes a while, but I beat it. And yeah, that was another. I feel like for people who were impressed by FF7's tech when it first came out, I was impressed by FF10 tech when it first came out. Like. You look at you ever notice how PS1 FMVs had like a stuttery frame rate?
Yeah.
Because I think just because of tech limitations. And then you look at like FFX and these like better visuals, like 60 FPS FMVs, and it's just like, damn, game, this is the future. And, full voice acting, like fully orchestrated music, and just very impressive powerhouse and a good game on top of that. And then Kingdom Hearts going all out with like the Disney aesthetic and a lot of the returning voice actors and celebrity for
So I never touched Kingdom Hearts 1, but my sister was playing it. I would watch her play it.
Sure.
She got to Hollow Bastion and stopped.
It gets hard there.
And so I went straight into Kingdom Hearts 2, not beating Kingdom Hearts 1.
And did you play Shade of Memories?
No, I went straight to Kingdom Hearts 2.
Very confused, I bet, for that opening.
I mean, I just kind of
rolled with it.
Let it go. Like I'm sure it'll make sense eventually.
And it never did.
Type of mentality. But yeah, quick thing. Speaking of Final Fantasy X, I played about 2 hours of 10 too before deciding that game's not for me.
Same. I got it for Christmas, and I remember bringing it to a cousin's who would watch me play at 10, and we get to the beginning with, like, Yuna and Riku running around in bikinis singing pop songs, and there's very much this air of, something's different. Like, I'm not saying just make the first game again, but, like, this feels out of left field.
Yeah. Having said that, like, I cannot hate 10-2 just because it has one of my... We were talking about pro wrestling earlier. One of my favorite commercial tie-ins of all time.
What?
Where an episode of WWF SmackDown was sponsored by Square Enix or SquareSoft at the time, and Final Fantasy X too. And the commentator Taz was a former professional wrestler. He just whips out a PS2 controller. It's like, I'm playing Final Fantasy X too. Look, that's Yuna. Look at the guns. Poo poo poo.
I see this is on YouTube. That's a good.
I think he clearly has no idea who because an FMV is playing, but he's acting like he's the one controlling the character.
Don't you love in TV when like they're clearly not playing whatever's on screen, but they're like moving around and pressing the buttons like, "Ooh, I got you." It's like so out of touch.
For the WWE title. Whoa! Chad, cool, man. What are you doing?
I think I'm playing Final Fantasy X too, baby. This is awesome. Look at that. There's Yuna. Yeah. Yuna. Yuna, that's the girl, man. Yuna.
You
gotta get down. Final Fantasy, bro.
This thing is unbelievable.
Oh yeah, it's great. So look at this. Hit this thing right here.
Oh man, and the funny thing is, apparently, like very recently, there's no pro wrestler playing the video game backstage footage or anything like that. But one of the NXT pro wrestling events a couple of years ago was sponsored by Kingdom Hearts 3. It's just
it's cyclical. Square Enix is going to keep sponsoring wrestling.
Yes.
That's fine.
But yeah.
And actually, I've never asked you if you've been familiar with a certain thing. Well, actually, let me ask you something first about something you have brought up, because I know one thing we saw rising at this time was the rise of I'd call it like the 3D character action game, the big ones being God of War and Devil May Cry.
Yes. I did not play the Devil May Cry games until much later, and even then, it was only 3.
But 3's like a milestone.
Although before all that, my first exposure to the character action game was God Hand.
Yes, I played a little bit of that. I really sucked at it, but I liked it. Infamous for this like 2 out of 10 IGN review, and everybody else going, "You are crazy. This is cool."
Yes, like it's like, you know, I watched friends play. I didn't actually own it, and I'm like, this game is nuts. And I had fun watching it. And so I was just like, that was my first exposure to the character action game. Oddly enough, like I haven't played a lot of them. Believe it or not, I've never touched a God of War game in my life.
I played a little bit of the original. It wasn't my thing, but the reboot is very good, and I'm excited for Ragnarok.
That's good to hear. But yeah, games like that, were definitely big in that era, and would lay out to the platinum of the future.
Team Clover. I will say first, not all of that genre was winners. Because you remember when they tried to reinvent Castlevania to be that, and they tried so many times, and none of them landed.
Yeah, Castlevania just in general just has bad luck when it comes to games over time.
Especially 3D games. It just works as a 2D Metroidvania. But
the 64 one, the fighting game.
That was with the Death Note designs. That was so weird.
Yes.
But I will say, this generation saw the rise of a Capcom subsidiary called Team Clover, who I think they only made 3 or 4 games, but they were all really awesome. So there was God Hand, Beautiful Joe, which was on GameCube first, but when they got it on PS2, they added Dante as a playable
featuring
character.
Dante from the Devil May Cry series, which became a meme over the years.
No, that was Digital Devil Saga. That was another Dante edition.
Yeah, but Dante is a Beautiful Joe.
Dante is featuring Dante. So,
yes.
Versus battle, death battle. Versus we have in one ring we have featuring Dante from Devil May Cry series, and in the other we have bonus funky mode. Who wins?
And Knuckles.
Oh, and that wins.
Yes.
And Knuckles. I mean, that's canon now, where Mania has Knuckles and Knuckles. Like it has the
Knuckles and Knuckles and Knuckles.
Oh my god! Yeah, everything. Just throw Knuckles at it. But Clover was my favorite from them, and one that has since is also like readily available. I think it has modern HD ports. You ever play Okami?
I have. Yes.
So good.
Yeah, there's Okami, and then what's the other one? Okami Den?
The DS one. I heard that wasn't as good, so I never played it. I would love a proper sequel, but I don't think that's. I don't. You know, it was.
But they keep re-releasing and remaking it because it clears people like Okami enough, where they just keep putting it out on newer hardware.
Yeah, maybe it's good. Maybe they see investing in a fully new one as a risk. You know how game development is. Okay, no. So we've talked about platformers. We've talked about 3D action games. I will touch on. Do you play many FPSs?
I did not. I'm not a big shooter guy. I'm very well aware of like the Call of Duty people out there in the world.
I will say, historically speaking, because I still want to bring up like some historical important stuff. I feel like this generation and the PS2 in general was when console first-person games really started to blossom into what we now know as.
SOCOM games. That's right. Yeah,
both with online play and like adopting the twin stick control style and basic controls. Like I've heard great things about the Time Splitters games, which were made by the GoldenEye Perfect Dark devs, who made their own team.
The funny thing is, when I think of the FPSs of that era, I don't think of the PS2 because I think of Unreal Tournament on PCs.
Right, which I actually played a little bit of too. I think it was already established on PC even before that, where people were playing like multiplayer Doom and stuff.
Yeah.
But this was like GoldenEye gave console gamers a taste of having some fun shooters.
Yeah. And then Halo happened.
Halo happened, but that's not it's not PS2, but I'm sure that inspired some of this stuff.
Yeah, it's that generation is what I mean.
This was the birth of the modern FPS. Medal of Honor was a huge thing in the PS2, and then Call of Duty just came and stole its thunder pretty much. Totally usurped it. I remember hearing about this great game called Black, which was actually by the Burnout developers.
I've heard about it, and apparently it just like Burnout, there's a lot of destructible aspects about it.
Yeah, that was the gimmick, was especially for the time, like shoot barrels and environmental stuff, and like really mess with hazards and stuff, which is a cool idea. And also it was on PC and it's third person, but I know people really loved those first two Max Payne games.
Yes, so Max Payne, bullet time, I believe that was the big selling point of that, where you would jump either forward or to the side and time would slow down. You would aim your reticle to try to shoot people until you land on the ground and bullet time stops.
Yeah, and had this go ahead.
I was gonna say, which it's fun from a gameplay standpoint, but from looking at someone else play it standpoint, where you're just jumping left and right and forward just to stop time. Like, we saw that in real time. These guys just jump, shoot, get up, jump, shoot. It's a little ridiculous in retrospect.
Yeah. So here's one I don't think I've ever heard you talk about these games, but I want to ask you if you have history. This was when GTA came to its own as well, and
I've only ever played one GTA game.
Which one?
Vice City.
Okay,
it was another rental period, and I rented it multiple times because I was having fun with it. But maybe it's just because of me being a dumb middle schooler or whatever I was back in the day. I didn't know how to progress certain story modes because it's a very open-ended game.
You weren't aware of the map icons?
Like, I was aware there was kind of a thing. Like, again, you're asking me to try to remember stuff from over a decade ago. Yeah. But I particularly remember enjoying playing the game, enjoying just running around and listening to music in the cars and things like that. But I stopped playing because I didn't know how to progress certain story beats. Like, there's sometimes I would, but then sometimes I'm just driving around killing people.
Yeah,
and trying not to get caught by cops.
Here's just the crazy thing. You look at today, and especially the AAA market, there is no shortage of open world games. They're almost expected to be. It's either you're a linear Uncharted type cinematic adventure, or you're a huge Assassin's Creed, Far Cry open world. And that latter didn't exist really until GTA 3 happened, and kind of just changed people's conception of how you could do progression and exploration in a game. What do you mean you're not just spawn into level 2? What do you mean you can just freely explore this map and mess around with the world and find hidden goodies? It created a new and one of my favorite trappings for games. And I did play. I admit I barely played San Andreas. It was not for lack of interest, but it was just a very crowded time for other games that were taking my priority. But I played a lot of 3 and Vice City and have a lot of good memories of the feel of those games. The soundtracks, because it popularized having radios on the cars, and Vice City was a period piece. Great story and dialogue in games. Obviously, the character models look like ass by today's standards, and the remasters did not help as much as people hoped with that. But I'm going to go against the grain also and say, for me, the remasters I've been playing them simply because they fixed my one big complaint with the games, which is, do you remember how you didn't get to retry missions right away?
Oh, yeah, you would just die. And
you would die, you would lose money, you would lose all your weapons and ammo, and you'd have to drive back to them, and there were no checkpoints. It was brutal, and that's the only reason I never beat them. The remasters add, instead of that, it's just, oh, you died. Do you want to just start the mission from the beginning the way you were instantly? Yes. So now I can finally beat those games.
Checkpoints, man, they matter.
Yeah, but we took them for granted. Take for granted nowadays. They weren't as frequent in the old days.
Yeah. But what you do, because it was a PS2 and you had to save, you would just save before a mission, and then you're like, oh, I failed. I'll just turn the PS2 off and on again.
But let's go back and forth a bit. Are any other individual games that you wanted to bring up?
Individual? I don't want to go too much into it because we did a whole episode on it, but there were a lot of great rhythm games on the PlayStation 2.
Yeah, great, experimental and even trend-setting era, because the first Guitar Hero was a PS2 exclusive.
Yeah. On top of that, you like Guitar Hero 1, 2, and 3. I owned on PS2, and I played the heck out of those games, and I loved them. I'm just gonna go through them quickly because we did a whole episode on it. But like Rez, Amplitude, Mad Maestro, Parappa 2, like all on PS2, and they're all fantastic games.
Yep. And you never played it, but I brought up Guitar Man also as like a hidden gem.
Yeah. Like and also like the PlayStation 2 was the system for Dance Dance Revolution games.
Yeah, there's a lot of
DDR
them.
Extreme 1 and 2.
That's your favorite
And
one,
Max
right?
1 and 2. DDR Extreme 1 and 2 are both like fantastic. They're the best, in my opinion, the best song listings. Max 1 and 2 that came out before Extreme were also really good song lists, although they're kind of filled up with like the first like 5 or 10 songs are all like, here's some popular music from nowadays, and it's like I don't play DDR to listen to like, you know, I play because I went to the arcades. I play DDR to play DDR music, like, you know. Like,
Yeah, you expect a certain type of music, and they
Yeah.
sold out a bit.
Yeah, but I mean, I get it. But that's why I liked Extreme 1 and 2. There's very little of it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say there's none, but there's little of it.
Yeah. So again, like kind of a golden age for experimental rhythm gaming, and the birth of one of the well, actually, no, it wasn't the birth of DDR because that had PS1 and arcade
Yeah,
games
PS1
before.
had DDR Konamics.
I've actually played the Disney one.
Oh God.
Trippy.
Did you ever play the Mario one?
Yeah, I have. You're going to laugh. I have the case for that. I'm looking at it. It's about 4 feet away from me because I lent it to our last guest, my cousin Mia. She brought it back. And I never put it away. I actually have used that dance mat to play Stepmania a couple times.
Man, I miss Stepmania. I had so many step charts back in the day that I enjoyed playing with.
I got lost. You said that on the rhythm episode.
Yeah, unfortunately, just, you know, stuff you save on a computer. If you don't have it on a drive or a CD-ROM somewhere, they just go forever when your computer dies.
Yeah, or if you give away or you trash the computer or something. I kind of wonder, like, what stuff have I forgotten about that if I had backed it up, I'd be like, oh, that thing. But let me talk a very iconic exclusive that is thankfully easily accessible today. Ever play Shadow of the Colossus?
Fun fact, no. I've watched gameplay of it. I've seen.
Okay.
Thanks to our modern day and age of YouTube Let's Plays, I can watch other people play games I've never played, but I have not touched the game personally.
I feel like that would be a neat game to watch because even if you're not playing it, the boss fights can be very tense.
Yeah.
But yeah, for those who didn't play it, so there was actually Eco before that, which I tried briefly and didn't really like. But a lot of people do swear by it, but I just can't attest to that. But Shadow of the Colossus, it's technically an open world game, but the emphasis isn't on finding goodies and stuff. It's just kind of soaking in the atmosphere and riding your horse to different points on the map to take on the Colossi, these big stone and fur giants, and having these like big elaborate boss battles with. I will say, if you play it on PS2, like that game was pushing the system to its limit because the frame rate could really lag with the size and scope of these guys. But that just shows the ambition because there isn't really another game like it, and I always think of like some really powerful orchestral pieces that play during the boss battles. I'll put one of them in the background of the finish episode because there's one that always sticks with me. The nice thing is, even though we never got any sort of direct sequel to it, because I think the developer didn't want to do that, they went on to do Last Guardian, and then I think they broke up. So there was a straight port on PS3. You're welcome to play that, but there's also a visual remaster / remake on PS4, also playable on PS5, and that runs great and keeps the essence of the game intact. So if you're gonna, at this day and age, if you're gonna play Shadow of the Colossus, I said go for that. But it's a game that kind of has like a timeless feel to it. It doesn't smack of like 2000s aesthetic or mechanics, which isn't a bad thing. But if you want something that feels like it could be made today, like an indie game, I'd say go for that. So I feel like we're kind of winding down, but here's something I'm going to spring a question on you.
There's a few other things we haven't even touched on.
Well, let's touch on them. Yeah, go ahead. I've been talking.
We were talking so much about skateboarding, extreme sports, and we didn't even touch upon the extreme sports on PS2 because there was Tony Hawk 3, 4, Underground 1 and 2, and I think American Wasteland on PS2.
I feel like Underground 2 was considered like the last of the golden age, though.
Yeah, but Underground 1 was my jam.
That's a lot of people survey. That was another game changer, kind of like open world, go in different vehicles and on foot, make your own character, and there's a full story.
It's
so
a Tony Hawk game with an actual story mode. Fuck Eric Snow.
One of the most hated antagonists. I think the true ending, the only difference is you sock him in the face finally.
Yeah, you beat him in a skateboarding trick off, and then you punch him in the face, and it's great, and it's cathartic, and it's just hilarious to me that person would eventually become Haida from Agretsuko, and Joseph Joestar from Part 2 of JoJo's.
Wait, was that Ben Diskin?
That's Ben Diskin as Eric Snow.
Oh, I didn't know that was him. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm an old timer, so I know him as Eugene from Hey Arnold because he's been acting since he was a kid.
Yeah. But yeah, Underground, like, I think is my favorite Tony Hawk game. And the thing is, those weren't the only extreme sports games on the
SSX,
PS2.
baby.
Yeah. So I never played the original, but Tricky and 3 are fantastic.
Exact same boat. I played them. I think I played 2 on GameCube. I mean, Tricky on GameCube and 3 on Xbox, but it's the same game, so who cares? Yeah, 2 is more is linear courses, but it's super elaborate and flashy and fun. And then 3 is like an open world mountain and more customization, and it's just so impressive even today. Because it's not like there's a crowded market of snowboarding games, so it still feels refreshing to play them.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember when I first played SSX3, I'm like, this doesn't have the flavor of Tricky. None of the like bombastiousness, none of the Run DMC screaming. Yeah, none of that stuff. And I'm like, what? This game is gonna blow. And I love it now more than Tricky, just because of the stuff you can do in that game.
It's dense.
And the soundtrack. It was a custom. It was a custom soundtrack from Mixmaster Mike, I believe, that had a bunch of great songs from like Placebo and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and it's such a good soundtrack.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's never been a remaster or re-release of the SSX games. Though I do believe, well, it's not PlayStation, but I do believe the current Xbox systems you can play SSX 3 on if you have the OG Xbox disc. So that's the closest you're gonna get. Yeah,
they did like about 5 or 6 years ago tried to make a new SSX.
Yeah, it was pretty good, but it wasn't on par.
I couldn't get into it because they changed the control scheme.
Yeah.
Like it was just weird to play an SSX game and not have that. The skate games I think were on PS2 as well, but I never touched any of them, so I have no comment on them.
I feel like that's more of a 360 PS3 era, but it wouldn't shock me.
I might be wrong. I might be wrong.
It might be on both.
But when there's one more extreme sports game that I think not a lot of people knew about back in the day, called Aggressive Inline.
Heard of it?
Which was a rollerblading extreme sports game that was made by Acclaim, who also made the Dave Mirra series and would eventually make the much foretold BMX XXX.
Oh, do you know what's funny? That was going to be a Dave Mirra game, and then he saw it and was like, take my name off this.
Yes. But Aggressive Inline is also really good and it's not as polished as Tony Hawk, but I believe that game actually had skitching before Tony Hawk did, where you can hang on to the back of a car and speed up and that kind of thing. And so I have a big personal thing for the Aggressive Inline game, but just it's only one, unfortunately, but it's a good one.
So, okay, I had a fun idea for, if we're going to do like, I feel like we're winding down, but let's still talk a little more individual. I want you to name one, what was like a super obscure and forgotten PS2 game that you really liked that means a lot to you? Because I have one. I have 2 technically.
Music Maker. It's pretty much just a shovelware game that you're just given a bunch of music samples and tracks, and you just place them where you want to make a song.
I've heard of that,
me and my sisters, I found it for $10 at a Toys R Us, and then my copy broke. But because it was $10, I have 2 physical copies of Music Maker in my house right now.
Wow.
And it's time consuming. And it's honestly not the most comprehensive music tool you can find nowadays. At the time,
back then, yeah,
like it was great. Like it's like, oh, I can actually pitch like the guitar sound here. This is awesome.
Nice.
Like,
actually, I did forget one more that I wanted to bring up before I get to my like obscure pick. Did you ever play the Katamari games?
The first one I did.
So fun.
There's a lot of like I feel like there's a lot of stuff we haven't touched on yet. Like one thing I wanted to bring up actually. The PS2 was great for collection games.
That was like when those started to blow up more, but it was also before they were being sold digitally. But yeah, a lot of classic arcade and console. I
had Sonic Mega Collection,
yes.
The Mega Man Collection.
Yes, I had that one.
Metal Slug Collection.
Mm-hmm.
Street Fighter anthology games where you've got Street Fighter 1, 2, and 3 on.
I actually kind of liked the Mega Man collection more than the current one because like the menu was him. We were actually like controlling Mega Man, running around through doors and stuff.
Yeah, and on top of that, you unlock games like
you unlock games. You unlocked. I remember there was a different thing. There was on PS2 and GameCube. One version unlocked the pilot of the '90s cartoon, as in, oh no, he's gonna shoot President Lincoln. But the other one had like an original documentary, which I remember watching and enjoying. You can probably find it on YouTube now. But yeah, great compilations. So
yeah, the Sonic Mega Collection. I remember if you go into the options mode, they had all the Sonic comic covers that you can just kind of look through.
There's a great video where the Game Grumps look through them. Have you ever seen that?
Yes, I have. I'm well aware.
I can see forever.
And one other thing, and then I'm done. I'm gonna stop interrupting you. We haven't touched on the fighting games. PS2 is such a good fighting game console.
Yes, you can go off on that because other than Tekken, I was not that big into traditional fighters. I'm a platform fighter guy now. That's the thing.
So obviously, we mentioned Tekken Tag 1, Tekken 4, and 5 were also on.
I did play Tekken 5. Loved it.
Tekken 5 is so good. It's probably, when people discuss what are the best Tekkens of all time, most people say it's a toss-up between 3 and 5.
Yeah, it was so fully featured and gorgeous, and one of my favorite fighting game intros ever.
Heihachi Mishima is dead. I remember I watched that at an internet cafe. I'm like, what the heck? Spoilers, he's not.
No, he's never going to be dead. I love the fact that, like...
I mean, Tekken 7 spoilers, maybe he is.
I'll believe it when I see it. That's the same as, like, Mia saying to me... Did you see Multiverse of Madness?
I have not yet.
Okay, well, then I won't spoil anything, but she was like, that character's definitely dead. And I'm like, until I see a body, no.
But yeah, like the PS2 also had Soul Calibur 2 and 3.
I did. Oh, you know what? I like how I'm saying I don't play any of these, but I played a lot of Soul Calibur 2 on GameCube, so I played with Link and stuff. But Soul Calibur is such a good series.
I had Heihachi, who is not dead.
And Xbox randomly had Spawn because they weren't pretty good at putting Master Chief.
No, but honestly, Soul Calibur 3 was my jam back in the day, and I really enjoyed it. The PS2 also had the Mortal Kombat 3D games, which honestly aged like milk, but at the time I loved. Deadly Alliance, Deception.
I remember hearing about like so many extra modes and mini games. There was like a kart racer and chess. And
there's a puzzle game in there. Yeah. There's a bunch of fun, like, extra videos you can unlock in those games, like the infamous Cooking with Scorpion sketch. Which, if you haven't seen, it's so fantastic because it's just like a scorpion with an axe, and he's going to teach you about chopping, meat tenderizing, chopping, cake decoration, and chopping. It's just him using an axe to just chop up various meats.
So wholesome.
Yeah, I'll send you that video as well. I have a few things queued up for you when we're done with this show.
Yeah, you sent me the WWE. I'm playing with Yuna. I'll talk that out later. I'll do that audio in the episode. But any others?
Really quickly, Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3.
I barely played 3, but 2 is the only Metal Gear I played to completion. And I will say I played it long after it came out because I remember that was the Last of Us 2 vintage tape. People were pissed.
Yeah, because like the game, Metal Gear games are always about Snake. Technically, Metal Gear Solid 2 is, in the end of the day, about Solid Snake. You just spend 3/4 of the game not playing as Solid Snake.
And they fucked with gamers because they hid Raiden from the ads. They made you think this was a 100% Snake game.
Yeah.
Kojima was just being Kojima.
Yeah.
But
at the end of the day, it's still a good game, yeah.
Yes. And you got Snake back and all the other stuff, so don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I will say, if we're bringing up, I don't think I've ever brought this game up on the podcast, but I've definitely brought it up with other people, or maybe I have. But if we're going to talk about like something that just totally flopped, but those who have played it love it, have you ever heard of Skygunner?
I have not. No.
Exactly. This is a very unique game, and it's also interesting in that it was a Sony first party exclusive, even though Sony chose not to localize it. Atlas brought it over. It is a anime style like flight sim, similar to stuff like I'd say like Rogue Squadron or Free Space and that kind of stuff, or All Range Mode and Star Fox. But it's this cute like kind of chibi characters with this very 1800s Miyazaki steampunk vehicle style. It's fun. and it's just super charming. I love the soundtrack. I love the character design. It literally has my favorite game intro ever. I'll post that. I'm gonna bring my geekiness here. You know about how people are like AI upscaling old textures in SD video?
Yeah.
I did that with the Skygunner intro. I legit extracted it from the ISO and did that. So you can watch that on your own time later. But it has this beautiful song and this charming like Venice, Paris style town. And it just feels like a world that begged to be expanded upon, and it just didn't get the chance. So it's kind of one of those things, it's like treasure what you got, because sometimes you won't get more of it.
Indeed, I hear you.
So yeah, that is, I guess we can kind of start winding things down, but I will say one other thing so I've told people the PS2 is tied with the Super Nintendo as my favorite system of all time. And one of the reasons that, you posted the Scorpion thing, I'll definitely check that out. One of the reasons I admire it so much, because it's something that's kind of a lost art in AAA gaming. This was the peak of AAA gaming willing to be experimental, weird, whimsical, fantastical. You notice, like, when games went HD, they upped the grit.
Yeah.
I miss that. I miss that. Like, Japanese developers in particular were so good on this and the PS1, like, injecting imagination and a sense of the fantasy into their aesthetics, their concepts, the mechanics, their soundtracks. Like, it's become much rarer that I get that sensation from games. It's usually indie or lower budget ones that do it, and now I've learned to really treasure it when it does happen.
Yeah, like the PS2 is not like immune to the gritty nature of, like,
we talked about
played,
the edgelord stuff.
and not even games we haven't talked about, like Manhunt or Twisted Metal Black.
Yeah, I heard good things about those games though.
Yeah.
But
I used to be big into Twist. I never played Black, but 1, 2, and 3 on the PlayStation 1 were really fun.
I played 2 at my
I
friend's,
never played Black because I was a squeamish boy, and I'm like, I don't want a lot of blood in my car shooting game.
It's funny, they haven't made a new game since that PS3 reboot, but they're making a TV show of it with Anthony Mackie, apparently.
Yeah, interesting.
So maybe we'll see a new one. I kind of wonder, like, I feel like you'd have to, like, elaborate on it. It can't just be the death match for the whole game. But it's a cool concept. So one thing I want to say for a closing thing is, I think something that proves this system's quality is that there's still people doing stuff with it to this day. Like, I talked about the Klonoa game getting a fan translation patch. That's happening more and more with games from this era, because there's obviously a lot of stuff we didn't get, but now we're starting to. One that I've gotten into recently, have you ever heard of Namco Cross Capcom?
I have. It's like a big, like, it's like a dialogue action RPG type thing.
I don't know about dialogue. I mean, there's a lot of dialogue, but it's not gameplay. It is like a 2D sprites on a 3D isometric map strategy game, but it has this unique kind of like semi-real-time, like, juggle action combat system, and some great sprite and portrait work, and just like a ton of, like, a rose gallery from Namco and Capcom. You can play as Klonoa.
Let's say that's the only thing I know about the game. I just saw a screenshot with King from Tekken and Klonoa talking to, like, Phoenix Wright and Ryu. And
that's the sequels. Phoenix Wright is in. There were 2 sequels for the 3DS, Project Cross Zone, which actually did get localized. And I'd say, like, the gameplay gets better with each one. Like, they're good games, but they're best enjoyed in short bursts, because the gameplay, long spurts, the gameplay gets very monotonous. But it is cool to see these characters together. They get a lot of the original voice actors back in Japanese, and the combat is very flashy. And I just love good 2D sprite work. So I've been playing some of that. And the other thing I was going to bring up: are you aware of the emulation scene for PS2 lately?
I do know people do emulate. What's funny is, like, you don't hear about the PS2 emulation as much as you do hear about, like, GameCube and Wii emulation, especially with Dolphin emulator being a huge thing lately.
Yes, Dolphin. So the main PS2 emulator is PCXS2. This enables, obviously, one of the positives is you can play your games in native HD. You know, it's not as stuck in the 480 or like that fake upscaling where it's still blurry and stuff. Because that's what happens if you plug a PS2 into your HDTV today. It looks weird. But you can also, people have done widescreen hacks for almost every game. And the one thing is, so they've added 2 things in recent months that excite me. One is enabling you to both rip and replace textures, which means people are doing fan-made remasters for the textures and UIs and stuff. I'm actually working on one for Namco Cross Capcom because you have to. The way it works is you can't just rip all the textures at once. You have to play the game, and whatever shows up gets natively dumped. So I'm doing a full playthrough and using AI upscaling for the character portraits, the icons, the environment textures, and it's nice. And
that's neat.
Yeah, so it kind of is giving a new lease on life on old favorites, and like I'm going back and because it was such a huge library, I'm playing other stuff for the first time or stuff I didn't beat. So that's nice. Here's the other thing: have you heard of retro achievements?
Oh, so they added achievements to PS2 games?
They just, in this past month, PCSX2, you can log into your Retro Achievements account, and they've already got like 90 games supporting it. I was replaying Jack and Daxter 1. I think Soul Calibur 2 and 3 have it. Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 have it. And it's just going to keep coming. Like, it's going to be a great excuse to revisit. So for those who don't know what it is, obviously we know that like the Xbox 360 invented achievements or trophies on PS4 and then achievements everywhere else, except Nintendo, because Nintendo doesn't like achievements for whatever reason. But I always think it's one of my favorite little things. Like, they're optional, but it does give you a nice incentive to try and get the most out of your games and get all the unlockables and stuff and finish all the modes 100% in game. And somebody got the idea with emulation, why don't we make an app that like users can code achievement sets into old standard def era retro games, and they're gradually catching up. Like, I think all the main like PS1, they've had PS1, N64, and like Saturn and for era for a while. Obviously, all the pixel art stuff games, they have most of that for a while. They just started on Dreamcast as well. There's a lot of stuff there that you can do. And I feel like it's only a matter of time before like GameCube and Wii and maybe original Xbox. That one's hard to emulate, but it'd be nice if like we live in a world where technically there are achievements for every generation of games. Because I love it's such a good excuse.
Because the original Xbox has so many games that I remember. I never at one point in my life ever owned an original Xbox, but there were games on it that I always wanted to play that I never did, like the Jet Set Radio Future, Cell Damage.
I think that got a GameCube port.
Oh, neat.
But not PS2.
My favorite was... get on PS2, though? Crazy Taxi.
Yeah.
Thank goodness, like, that era of Crazy Taxi releases does have the Offspring and Bad Religion music, because modern re-releases don't. And I
remember hearing when they put it for digital releases, they couldn't negotiate or something. I guess they just decided not to, and it was like, then what? Then why bring it back? It's not Crazy Taxi without that soundtrack.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been talking a lot about the achievements and stuff, so I just like, do you have any like kind of general closing thoughts on the PS2, that era and the games and like their impact on you and on gaming?
Just fond memories, honestly. I still have my PS2 with me despite having a PS3 and PS4. For the longest time, the only reason I don't anymore because I need to get a new converter for it. For those that don't know, I play fighting games competitively.
Oh yeah.
And my go-to is I would play on a PS2 controller with a Brook converter to play on PS4s and PCs. Because that's what I grew up playing fighting games on. Was like I played Street Fighter Alpha Collection on PS2s. I played Soul Calibur and Tekken on PS2s. When I entered a Tekken 5 tournament for the first time, the arcade machine that was at the Flippers Arcade in Miami, Florida, had a controller slot that you could plug your PS2 controller into, so you didn't have to use the joystick. It was like the coolest thing.
So do you still prefer controllers to like fighting sticks?
Yes. The thing is, I get that it's easy. It makes more sense to play on a stick just because of the tactile aspect of it. It's harder to mash the wrong thing on a stick than it would be on a pad. But the advantage that the pad has is it's quieter, it's easier on your hands. And on top of that, you don't have the joystick problem where if you do a Hadouken motion, you go down, forward. I have a tendency to over-rotate, and then when I try to throw a fireball, I jump forward because I go a little too far in the thing. And that's something you can learn, but at this point in my life, I'm happy and comfortable playing a controller, and honestly, other people are too. The person that won Guilty Gear this year in EVO played on a PS4 controller. The person that won Street Fighter 4 in 2012, he's a French player who plays on a PS1 pad.
Oh.
And so like, you don't need an arcade stick to be good. Although some might debate you might need a hitbox nowadays to be good, but that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, controllers are still valid, and it's still my comfortable like go-to. Like if I'm gonna play, my PC controllers that I have for the time being is not an official PS2 controller, but it's laid out exactly like one. And the buttons are a little bit stickier, but like I prefer playing that on my PC games than anything else. As that controller, there's a reason why PlayStation hasn't done too much reinvent the wheel over the years with their controllers. Like
it works.
Yeah.
I will say, you said like you're getting Frontiers on PS4, so you don't have a PS5 yet.
I do not. My sister has a PS5, but for now I'm sticking with PS4. I might eventually get one because Tekken 8 looks like it might be PS5 exclusive based on the crazy graphics it has going.
That teaser looked pretty.
Yeah. So down the line, but I am in no rush, especially because my money is going to travel and conventions and buying stuff that I probably shouldn't anyways, but I do.
This has been my year of getting back to conventions. I actually just went to Anime USA like 2 weeks ago.
I'm going to Otaku Fest. I already have 4 if you count the fighting game tournament. I'm going to have 4 trips planned next year. I'm going in January to Otaku Fest, which is in Miami, so it's not that far. I'm going to be going
For context, Felipe lives in Florida.
Yes. I live in Miami specifically.
Right.
I'm going to CEO, which is a big fighting game tournament that happens every year in Daytona, Florida, which is northern Florida. I'm going to be going to Megaplex in September. That's in Orlando, Florida. And outing myself a little bit for viewers that don't know, in May I'm going to Furry Weekend Atlanta, which would be it's going to be fun. I've never been to Georgia before, so I'm looking forward to
some furry
it.
reps of the podcast.
Yes. Yes, I am one of them, and yes, I have a head and paws and
it's cool.
a tail.
It's cool.
Yes.
Yeah, I when I was a teen, I think I joked about furries a lot, but now I'm like, I think there's way worse stuff you can be on the internet.
Oh yeah, like it's funny, like it's like the only people that make fun of them nowadays are like TikTokers that are 14 are like they're cringe, and like, but almost everyone else is like like either don't care or like they're cool.
Yeah,
which is part of the reason why I decided to go out with it, but.
Yeah, awesome.
That's a whole bag of worms.
You got an account for that, I believe.
I do. Anyways, but yeah, I'm going to be doing a lot of conventions next year, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, so I will. There's one thing I wanted to bring up. One fact that before we close it. So, did you know that to this day the PS2 is the best-selling console of all time?
Yes, I've heard about that a lot, and the main reason was because it was cheaper to get a PS2 than a DVD player.
That was a big part.
And so a lot of people just buy PS2s and just use them as DVD players.
That was a big part, but I think it still just shows like this system's quality. There were a lot of people who bought it for the games, and here's the thing. I always thought for a while, second place has to be the Wii. I remember how big the Wii was. You couldn't get the Wii. Wii's 7th.
Isn't it the original Game Boy?
No, actually. Do you want to take another guess at the second one? I wouldn't have guessed it right away. It was one that I was like, I know it did great, but number 2, I didn't know.
I'm gonna go because that was my guess. It's just I remember hearing a thing about like technically Nintendo labels the Game Boy, Game Boy Pocket, Game Boy Color as all Game Boy.
No, apparently on Wikipedia, if you lump all the Game Boys together, it's still like 3rd or 4th. The second is the original DS.
Huh. Interesting.
Let's keep in mind that was like the peak of portable gaming before smartphones kind of took a big bite out of the market.
Yeah. Isn't the PSP surprisingly high on that list?
Oh, you know what? Let me pull that up.
I remember seeing a video about how like everyone assumes the PSP failed, but it's actually in the top 10. It's the Vita that didn't do as good. But that's a different story.
PSP is 11, right between the Game Boy Advance and the 3DS, and Vita is way down. It's around the area of like the Game Gear and the Master System, the Wii U. It is surprising when you look at the fact that so PS2 sold 155 million, which holy shit. Original Xbox sold 24 million and GameCube sold 21 million. So like look at that gap.
Yeah.
Power of the DVD. But I guess my closing statement is at the end of the day, this system has the sales record and this legacy, and for me, this iconic fuzzy place nostalgic status for very good reason. It marked a huge step in technology, fidelity, and capability for home consoles. So many games with great ideas and ambition that paid off and became mainstays even to this day. It launched many great series. It fit the DVD craze at the perfect time. It was at the time a gold standard for backwards compatibility that Sony has only matched again recently with the PS5. And for me, like I said, it marked a peak to this golden age of innovation, creativity, and game design and presentation. It is still one of my favorite systems ever. I doubt that will ever change. And if you either skipped its exclusives back in the day or you were too young or not alive back then, I recommend tracking them down, whether you get an old system and games off eBay or I'd say support your retro gaming store, whether you emulate, or whether for individual titles you seek out some of those HD remasters that we talked about, because there are a lot of those. The legacy of the PlayStation 2 is one that I'm never going to forget how much it did for gaming and me as a gamer. So, this thing's pretty good.
Yep, I love my PS2. I still have it.
Go ahead.
No, I was about to say it's currently in my closet. I whip it out from time to time. I actually, it's a fun fact. I bought on eBay the PS2 version of Sonic Unleashed because I remember playing it a lot back in the day as when it was out. Because for those of you that don't know, the PS2 and Wii version compared to the PS3 and Xbox version are completely different games.
Different levels, different boost mechanic, yeah.
Yeah, and so like when I hear people online talk about how Eggman Land is the worst level in Sonic Unleashed, I'm like, that one's my favorite. It's like it's a big obstacle course of like knowing when to press stuff and boost. So I specifically bought Sonic Unleashed a PS2, plugged in my PS2. Still have my memory card for it. I just went straight to Eggman Land and just played it like twice, and like I'm happy, and I put it back.
Yes, I played the 360 version, and Eggman Land is a never-ending nightmare in that, and the last couple of bosses too. It's like one of the biggest. Unleashed is like that is the most like highs and lows in one Sonic game for me. Like a lot of daytime levels are like peak 3D Sonic. And then Werehog in the last like stretch of the game are just like what you expect from like the lesser stuff. It's such a weird game for that reason.
Yeah, I remember William R. Washington, currently on Fightful, former Fanoff member, tried to convince me to get an Xbox Series S because of the being able to play Sonic Unleashed at 60 FPS with no frame skips.
Yeah.
I didn't end up doing it because, again, I'm saving money, but
yeah, I'd rather they just do a remaster on everything. I'd plow through it again for like cheap money and better resolution.
I would hope that they do it considering all the hubbub about Sonic Colors Ultimate, but
well, yeah, do it better than that, I guess. So that's going to bring this episode to a close. A few things I want to say. Well, first off, Felipe, where can people find you on social media? And again, want to promote your podcasts and any other projects?
So definitely generationanimation.com is where you want to go. That is the place where we have all of our podcast episodes up. You can use the search function if you're ever curious about if we've ever talked about a specific cartoon or anime or movie that you like. If you just take a peek, we've done over 10 years, there's maybe a chance. You can find me personally at Felipe Diaz-Vera on Twitter. That's where I'm most active. If you're really curious about my furry side, at Fizzucker, I'll just throw that out there. And Fizzucker also for YouTube, if you want to just subscribe and stay tuned, because hopefully in about a month or two, I will be releasing a very interesting video essay that I hope people enjoy.
I'd say subscribe to that right now so you get it in your notifications. And to be fair, by the time this episode actually goes up, it'll probably be out.
Maybe.
Yeah. Myself, you can find me on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram at BehonArt, BehonArt. Twitter is the most active. Then I'd say Instagram, then Tumblr. Even though you can sometimes
you got a Twitch too, don't you?
I do, but I'm kind of thinking I might just stream on YouTube.
Okay.
I kind of want to look into like what is the best option if I want to like build an audience for financial gain, because I would like to. One thing I found out is a lot of voice actors have started doing streaming as a secondary thing. Jonah Scott, Kira Buckland, I believe. Yeah.
Jonah Scott's streams are fantastic, and he has YouTube highlights, and they're all fun. Of that, him going through his fan mail, send him a shoe encased in glass.
Nice.
One of the
When I
greatest
say
things
nice,
I've
that's
ever
just
seen.
weird. But
Yeah.
also, actually, I don't know if he's on Twitch, but I got Kyle McCarley in my recommendations lately because he did the video about the whole Mob Psycho situation, and it turns out he does streams.
Neat.
So I need to see which would be the best if I wanted to like get
Yeah.
donations set up. Because
Also, if I may plug, John is also available for voice acting. I literally just like going through
nice.
my YouTube feed, my Twitter feed. I just see the words "Big Nose" on there. I just like,
I thought you were going to say the WarioWare trailer. It's me giving a robot voice. You have a fucking big nose.
yes. I know you probably weren't expecting me to bring up that, but I just want to say I laughed during my waiting for my mom's appointment earlier
If you
today.
laughed, then it served its purpose. Shout outs to, a second, I'm just going to pull up the, I got asked to do that by someone who, Gemini Can 2804 on Twitter, who I discovered because he's a very funny and talented WarioWare fan artist. Anybody who knows me knows I love some WarioWare. And I thought you were going to bring up, because I put out the first teaser for the new WarioWare tuned episode, which is going to be an Ace Attorney and Danganronpa joint parody. So
Nice.
you can also, I believe my YouTube channel is, you can get it under like YouTube/Bihan, or you can find the link in my Twitter profile. You'll see some stuff there. Again, I upload episodes of this show on there, animations, and occasional game videos. I'm actually planning to do, once it's out and I play it, not a full-on review, but maybe I'm thinking for certain games, I want to do top 10 best and worst features. I'm definitely going to do that with Sonic Frontiers, so look forward to that. And again, you can find this show on Sketch Watch Play on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. I need to update the Instagram because I want to do little posts for every episode, and there's quite a bit of back catalog to go through. But let me
You have
close
a
with
Discord server as well, if I'm not mistaken.
it is so it's not a dedicated just to the show. It was actually you know how I did the WarioWare Reanimated collab?
Yeah.
And I'm actually still doing that because we did half the scenes because it would take forever to do all of them, but we're doing a second half, hoping to have it out by the end of next year. But it was founded for that, but it's become more general. It's called Diamond City Nights after location from the game. Highly recommend joining it. We talk cartoons and movies and games. We share art and personal projects and memes, and we just have a lot of fun. It's a very chill, no pressure place, and we're 200 members strong and having a lot of fun. I think you're actually a member on there as well, but you posted once about Steven Universe.
I'm a member of it. I pretty much use it just to like whenever I get an announcement of like, hey, Bihan is streaming or like whatever. It's just that's pretty much what I use it for.
I do everyone notifications for streams and for podcast episodes. But let's close things out with kind of, I guess I teased it on our Lord of the Rings episode, but now I can say a little more concrete. So our next episode after this is episode 50. And I wanted to do something special for like hitting that kind of milestone. For episode 25, I picked my favorite anime ever with Castle in the Sky, which you guys actually covered. You've covered a lot of Ghibli stuff on your show.
Yes, Dave went through every single Ghibli film.
He's a man of culture.
He literally dedicated 2 years to doing that.
Smart.
Eventually we got through it, so
yeah,
we did it.
But for episode 50, we're going more to the Western side of things, because I was like, I want to bring on like some Sketch Watch Play all-stars, like people who have guest starred a lot. And so I know you hadn't been on for a while, but you were one of our most frequent early guests. So I reached out to you.
Out of 50 episodes being on 4, I think that's a lot.
But I also, obviously I reached out to Christopher Wade, our original OG co-host, and someone who has come back multiple times. And someone who's been on a bunch, my brother Patrick. So all three of you are on board, and we haven't nailed down a precise date yet, but it'll probably be in late November. I was like, what's something big that like us millennials will always mean a lot to us, and it represents the goal of Sketch Watch Play to cover good animation media. Look forward to a dissection of the original Lion King for episode 50, a movie that I know all four of us have brought up our history and memories with. You've talked the sequel on Gen N.
We did both. We did 1.5 and 2.
That's right. You did 1.5 a while ago, and then you did 2, I think, within the past year. I'm actually going to I've never seen the sequels, and I'm going to do that and force myself through the remake just to bring up my takes on that. I'm not anticipating that remake, but got to be completionist. Maybe I'll watch a little bit of The Lion Guard. Patrick has said please don't watch The Lion Guard.
Here's the thing about Lion Guard, and I'm going to save most of my if I did this episode. Yeah, it's It's not great, but it is surprisingly dark because it's a preschool kids show that takes place in the world of the Lion King. So shit happens in that show, which is hilarious. Like,
I know it adds like a shit ton of characters. Like it really expands things, but it's also like a midquel because Kiara
it takes place
hasn't been born
between
yet?
Kiara is eventually in the show. Its existence is weird because
they never mentioned the main kid in Lion King 2. So it's like, whatever.
no, they don't mention Kovu at all. Freaking furry bait lion Kovu when he becomes an adult.
Mia, our last guest, has admitted her childhood crush on Kovu. She's not a furry, but she can resist that outcast lion.
Yes.
And on that note, I think we're gonna draw things to an end. All things lead back to
you
furry.
Want more furry takes on Lion King lore? Tune in next time.
Oh, it's gonna be brutal. It's gonna be so furry. I don't know what it's gonna be, but I look forward to it. Again, wishing everybody a pleasant night or day whenever you're listening to this. Who knows what time I'll upload it? But go play some PS2 and maybe go look at the Chad Muska documentary and go listen to Felipe's stuff. Go watch his YouTube and look up his furry account if you're into that. Do you have a good furry catchphrase to close the day, or am I putting you on the spot?
You're not gonna catch me giving you an uwu owo sentence in my life, so no.
All right, no woo woos tonight. Good night, everybody.